You got it.
I know we're not all here, but there's enough of us here.
All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started. If everybody can stand and face the flag, we'll do the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, couple of housekeeping notes to let you know, again, the mics are live. So even if you're not standing in front of one of these mics, your conversations get picked up. This meeting is being live streamed. It will then be archived onto our YouTube page. So if people can't watch it in real time, they can go back and watch it after the fact. Tonight's meeting is gonna be a long one, so I'm gonna keep this short. I'm gonna give the supervisor a chance to speak here in a minute too. This is awesome. We're a little light tonight in the LPC members. We're waiting on them to show up. We got some folks. I know we moved the meeting up to 5 o'clock, makes it hard for people that have day jobs. We have food over here. Anybody that wants to grab a half a sandwich and a bottle of water or seltzer, please do that. This is probably, and I don't want to step out over my skis, the most important meeting we're going to have. I'm going to turn it over to the state in a minute, and they're going to keep us on a time schedule because we have to do that tonight to get all 10 projects discussed and have us weigh in on that from the LPC side as we move forward. So with that being said, I'm going to point out a few people. Obviously, you can see who's here from the LPC. You can see who's here on the dais. Trustee Bill Brain is sitting in the front seat. Wave your hand, Bill, from the village. I'm seeing members in the back from our attorneys, our engineers in the village, Jason and P&D, Sean from the town's engineers, Kristen, obviously, who's our planner for the village and for the town. Dave Carnwright with the Cornwall hat right back there is here. Jim Kane, the deputy mayor, is going to be here shortly. Lori Beth Paleota, who's sitting in the front row, is our newest village trustee, so I welcome her here tonight. And beyond that, I'm going to turn it over to the supervisor before I give it back to Jill.
Sure. I mean, look, just real quick, looks like we got good turnout tonight. This is, like the mayor said, this is the most important meeting. We've got 10 projects, a good mix of public and private. What was the number?
Close to $8 million.
Sorry, close to 8 million. And so the state actually wanted more than the 4.5. So there was an adequate number of projects to evaluate and to ultimately go into a strategic investment plan. So the purpose of tonight is really to listen to these presentations, to really get a good feel for what they are. We want good questions from the LPC. We also want questions from the public when the time comes for that, because we want to have a good, process here. And, I'm going to turn it back over to you now.
Okay, great. And
Right,
although I'm actually going to turn it back over to one of you can read the LPC Code of Conduct. And George, if you can advance the slides to whichever one.
I'll only do it because it's closer to me. Okay. LPC Code of Conduct. Each local planning committee member, of which are seated perpendicular on these tables right here, is reminded of their obligations to disclose any potential conflicts of interest with respect to projects that may be discussed at today's meeting. If you have a potential conflict of interest regarding a project you believe will be discussed during the meeting, please disclose it now and recuse yourself from any discussion or vote on the project. For example, you may state that you or a family member have a financial interest in the project, or you are on the board of the organization proposing the project. Keep in mind, you may not recognize that till we get into a project, but if you don't realize that till later, just throw your hand up and say, I want to make that known now. Did I cover it?
You did.
All right, Madam Chair.
All right. Thank you very much. We have a lot going on today. So a quick look at our agenda. We have our usual things. We'll talk about the schedule, the public engagement update, project evaluation, and then we're going to get into the project sponsor presentations. We'll have each of the project sponsors is going to give a presentation about each of the projects. And then we are going to mix things up a little bit because tonight is a long meeting. Normally our meetings are 2 hours. Tonight we're keeping you guys here for 3. So we're going to move our public comment period up to almost the middle of the meeting, like maybe 60%, 70% of the way through, so that they can take a break and go home if they want to. So after the project sponsor presentations, we'll have our public comment, and then the LPC will resume with everything else. And here's today's schedule. We'll kind of go through this real quick. As you can see, we are almost all the way through, but not quite yet. So we have, this is the 4th out of 5 LPC meetings. We have 2 public workshops. We already held one of them. We'll be holding the other one in October 12th. So it's coming up in a couple weeks. And otherwise, and then the whole thing, we're going to finish up our strategic investment plan. We're still on track for mid-November. All right, public engagement update. We were going to go to the Fall Festival, but as you all know, it was sadly rained out. But we will be at the one on October 8th. So we plan on attending then. There we will, our main goal will be to encourage participation at the second workshop, which will be held later on October 12th. And we will also solicit feedback on the initial slate of projects. And then the workshop number 2, again, October 12th. We welcome all public members to attend. It will be held, I think at 5:30, I think 5:30. And it will be at Munger Cottage, and we'll be doing our outreach to local stakeholders, like we discussed a little bit more in depth last time at the last LPC meeting, and then otherwise advertising it through the normal methods. And we will provide an update on the planning process, vision and goals, and then most importantly, getting feedback on the list of projects from the public. Do I have any LPC questions? Nope. All right. All right, project evaluation. So this slide, you might remember, we've had this one for the last couple of meetings. This is really to go through so that everybody remembers what we're doing and kind of what this process is for the LPC. So at LPC meeting number 2, which seems like forever ago, you guys determined the project evaluation criteria to be used to refine the project list. And then at our last LPC meeting in the beginning of September, we presented the projects that we received through the open call. And then we talked about project eligibility, and we talked about, we went through some of the criteria.
Sorry.
Great song, Ray. That's our generation.
I mean, it makes the meeting kind of exciting, but sorry, I'm kind of boring here. So we talked about project eligibility, and then we talked about project readiness, and also some other things, which I'm forgetting. Sorry. And then tonight's meeting, we're going to have our projects presented by the project sponsors. And then you will, the LPC will use the project evaluation criteria to continue to refine the project list if you wish, and determine the initial slate of projects that will be presented to the public at the public meeting. And then at the last meeting, LPC meeting number 5, that's when you'll determine the final slate of projects that are included in the strategic investment plan. All right, this is the project evaluation criteria. That's right. Last time we talked about the state, local, and regional goals. Today, we're going to focus on project readiness. We did some of that last time. We'll do it again this time, but using some different criteria. We're also going to look at catalytic effect, and then co-benefits, which I'll describe in a minute what those are. And then at LPC meeting number 5, our last and final one, we will talk more about cost effectiveness and public support, because by then we'll know what the public support is. All right, so for tonight, this is the way things are going to work tonight, is that we're going to have our project sponsors come up. They will have 5 minutes to present, and then the LPC will have 5 minutes to ask questions, and they will provide some answers if they can. And then the LPC members will have 2 minutes for evaluation. We're going to do it the same way that we did last time. George, can you advance the slides? I just noticed. Okay, thanks. And so it'll be very similar to last time with your phones, and we're going to use the Microsoft Forms. But this time the criteria is a little bit different. The criteria is project readiness, and we want to focus on, and first, if you guys there's a printout in your folders that we left each of you, so it might be easier just to have it right in front of you. So we're going to talk about capacity to implement the project and manage a state contract, very important for all of our sponsors. Ability to begin implementation in the near term. So as we've said all along, we're looking for projects that are shovel ready about 2 years from award. Not implemented in 2 years, but shovel ready in 2 years. Ability to proceed without any significant regulatory hurdles. And then we're going to look at catalytic effect, significant and transformative impact on downtown. Also the potential to attract other investment or create benefit beyond the New York Forward boundary. As we've discussed before, all of our projects must be within the boundary, as you can see on that map. So what this looks at is some of these projects possibly will impact the town and the village in a way that's beyond that boundary. And then we'll talk about co-benefits. You might remember in LPC number 2, we spent quite a little bit of time talking about this. And this is the area that's more, I'd say, custom designed for your community and what's important to this LPC. So co-benefits are ability to generate additional economic activity, tax revenue, or jobs, or jobs. Also public benefit, whether it improves quality of life. Potential to attract regional visitors. And then also enhances community connectivity and cohesion. I think Maureen, you're right up front.
I think you made the dais today,
Yes, you may.
which is a good thing or a bad thing. You got to sit next to me and Josh.
Thank you. Sorry for the interruption.
So I would like the LPC to, if you can take out your phones and you have the QR code, I think it's printed out on your sheet, just to get ready so that way you can, I think it's also up on the screen too if you need it. So I think that includes you guys as well.
Yep.
Just to get ready so that way after the presenters you can go right in. And it's going to be the same as last time where you'll be looking on a scale, responding on a scale of from none to very high, and then a not applicable if you should so choose. And then after the presentations, the public will have a chance to speak and ask questions, and then we will go over the results after that.
So Josh and I have been sternly lectured that we're not allowed to shill for any projects, not for the town and village projects or any of the not-for-profits or for the private sector ones. We have 10 great projects, and I'll stop there before Susan gives me the side eye. So I'll just say 10 great projects. We're gonna dig into them tonight and figure out which ones are gonna work.
And that's true. We've told this to all of the project sponsors that what we're looking for is not lobbying for their projects, but really just giving the facts of what the projects are. And then it's really up to the LPC to determine, is this a project that we think should go through? Is this a project that's worthy of being funded? Is this a project that has what we're looking for in our criteria?
You had a question?
Yeah,
I
any
think
questions?
I have a question.
Yeah,
I'll ask anyway.
sure.
So there is maybe a potential advantage or disadvantage to going first or last because we're voting on these. After we make these, we do the voting through this portal, can we go back and change, or are they locked in when we advance to the next project?
Oh, I think you can go back and change. George, is that right? Yeah,
Okay,
you can go back and change.
okay, thank you.
Yes.
But this isn't our vote.
No, at meeting, no, but you'll be,
Right.
yeah, it's more, not ranking, what would you call it? Evaluation.
It's an evaluation, yeah.
Evaluation.
It's more like a consensus tool to kind of see where everybody is.
Like we did in the last meeting. Sure.
Exactly.
I also,
Good question, though.
Yeah, that is a good question.
I also just realized, and I apologize, I forgot to introduce everybody to my colleague, George Fabricatore, who is here from VHB. He's replacing Christy for tonight.
Big shoes to fill.
Yes.
We're watching you.
All right, do we have any other questions about project evaluation criteria? No? All right, so we're gonna go on to our project presentations. And first we have just a map of all the different, where all the projects are. As you can see, there's a pretty nice distribution along the entire corridor of the New York Forward area.
Right.
Let's see, our first order, I'm just gonna read the first 4 presenters for tonight, so that way you guys know. But our first presentation will be about Riverlight Park, and then the Connector Trail, and then the Cornwall Imaginarium, and then Storm King Theater. So those are our first floor. Yeah, if you could, that would be great. And again, a reminder that presenters, you have 5 minutes for your presentation. And then LPC, you will have 5 minutes for question and answer.
Do you want me to raise my hand when we get to 1 minute? Like,
Slide.
for the-
Yeah.
Yeah,
Kristen.
and presenters, Susan will raise her hand when you have 1 minute left, just so you know. All right,
Oh, sure.
go for it,
Yeah,
guys.
sure. So, okay, so the town was thinking of doing a project to transform Riverlight Park and to turn it into an inclusive public park. Part of the way we do that is by putting in an ADA compliant walkway with a story walk partnering with the library and building a story walk around Rings Pond going back to the library. We would also build ADA compliant restrooms.
Which we've since revised.
Yes.
At pursuant to discussions this week, we're only gonna be renovating one existing bathroom that's there to try to cut down on some of the costs.
Yeah, and then as far as the playground is concerned, that is something that the town is going to do with whether or not this is part of this project. We do have funding from State Senator Skoufis, and we feel that the town can come up with additional funds either through the town will contribute that, or we'll get it through the parks CFA grant that we submitted. And then we also have a possibility of having a skate park as part of that. It's something that the youth in the community have asked for over the years. There's a sizable group, and so we're trying to locate one of those in Riverlight Park. That would be a public-private project. We would be looking for roughly 100,000 in New York Forward dollars with a town contribution as well as a private fundraising efforts there. There would be some drainage improvements with rain gardens. We want to renovate, the old shed that's next to the pond that has the ice house. We want to put a concrete floor in there, put new lighting in there, turn it into like a pavilion where families can picnic and we can have activities. So that would be an upgrade. We're also looking to go across the street over to Sandsring Homestead, and we know that that building is in need of repairs, dates back to the 1700s. So we're looking to put roughly $100,000 in there. When we get to the marketing, branding, wayfinding initiative, that's where we want to develop some brochures and some different marketing pieces to help, bring more people to that homestead and have that be a historical attraction in the town. We think it'll take, roughly a year for design, phase construction plus or minus 2 years. The town certainly has the capacity to manage, public funds and projects. We have a, town engineer, a planner, we can do a lot of this work in-house. We have a DPW where we anticipate having some in-kind funding coming in there. We also have diversified funding sources. We're only asking for roughly $1.2 million. 200,000 would come from the SAM award from Senator Skoufis. We've applied for a 750,000 CFA Parks grant. If we're not successful this year, we'll refine the application. We'll submit it again because, as you all know, you often have to submit 2 and 3 times before you get awarded. As you refine the application, eventually you get it. And sustainability elements, obviously, we're going to be looking to prevent some of the runoff that comes down from the Little League fields and goes into the pond. So we want to build rain gardens, possibly do some additional drainage. Regulatory hurdles, no outside permits other than SECRA. Think I got it all?
I think so.
Okay.
All right, LPC, do you have any questions?
I have one.
Yes.
So just to clarify this, Josh.
Yeah.
When you're talking about the playground expenses,
Yeah.
are those currently included in both of these, the project cost and then the New York Forward request right now? I mean, that cost is still part of those 2 figures, correct?
It is.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
got it, thanks.
Yes, Steve.
Are there any measures in place to minimize inconveniences for the parking during construction?
So during construction, the idea is to put up temporary fencing to guard, safeguard pedestrians from the construction and equipment and open pits that might be on there. Essentially, all the improvements are away from existing parking areas and generally where the use of the park is, people are not, where some of this construction is going to be. So I think it'll be pretty easy to try to segregate the people from the construction.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the playground, I mean, honestly, that'll probably be a big deal. But, every time Cornwall's replaced the playground, we've obviously had an interruption in, kids using the playground. We have a bunch of playgrounds in Cornwall they can, go to in the meantime. But I think, once we eventually get that ADA, accessible playground in place, I think, people will be really happy. And I don't know if you've seen our playground lately, but it is starting to break. Yes.
Does this project include the pool?
No, it does not include the pool. Yes.
Where would the location of the skate park be?
There's multiple locations that I think I think before we get to, let's just say before we get, I guess, final approval on this project, we would need to. Shit. Oh, Aim, sorry. Yeah. Yeah, there's probably one or two locations. We've discussed it. In fact, I think we may have even put them on here if they're on
A
there.
different version.
Yeah, a different version of that. So there's one idea where it could be over next to the police station, kind of, off to the right, and then potentially over by Munger Cottage and the library. I think was another location.
Correct.
It really depends on, how much site work we want to get into. There's certain locations where you would have to, bring in, you'd have to do a certain amount of, clearing and grading. We'd like to minimize that. So if we can find a location we don't have to do a lot of site work, that would certainly be preferable. It would cost less. Yeah.
How will the proposed drainage improvements such as the bioretention and the reline, how will they enhance the water quality?
Sure. So bioretentions are standard stormwater mitigation practices for water quality. So there's existing drainage improvements that convey the water from behind, like Weeks and Row Avenue, through the baseball fields to the pond. So it would be a simple catch basin diversion to the bioretention. We design it in accordance with the New York State DEC Stormwater Design Manual, and then it'll be discharged to the pond after it's filtered.
Yes.
Josh, excuse me, you mentioned synergy with the signage proposal. Could you just say a little bit more about that?
Sure. So basically, the marketing, branding, wayfinding initiative, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, we're going to need to make sure that we have the right signage pointing out the historic, like Sandring Homestead or the different places in the park. We're also looking to develop some historical brochures, maybe like a historical tour with information about.
No, I'm
oh,
sorry.
do you
I didn't
mean
want to hear about the proposal. I wanted to hear about the synergy.
Oh, sorry. So I think what wayfinding signage, or just in general, like I guess the branding and how we would, more wayfinding signage or more the overall like marketing.
Well, really what I'm getting at is this park sounds like a fantastic resource for
Yeah.
residents.
Yes.
The sort of grant overall has larger,
Sure.
not larger
Gotcha.
as a value, but has other priorities. And how might the wayfinding signage support other
Sure.
priorities?
So what I would say is that the wayfinding, overarching, is to bring in more visitors and tourism and drive economic development and to drive, sales tax and to, bring people into the downtown area. I think, this doing things in this park will also help fit in with the overall connector trail, and to get people from, let's say, uptown to downtown, down to Cornwall. But specifically, though, if we look at, let's say, Sandring Homestead, I'd like that to be a historical attraction, and maybe we create some type of historical, trail, because there's lots of history here dating back to the colonial era. Maybe when we look at the Cornwall Connector Trail, there's 5 or 6 pieces of public art that are going to stretch from, up in the town down to the village. We're going to look to locate one of those in the park. So certainly, as part of, we would look to guide people via the signage from, let's just say up by the traffic circle down to the village, stopping along the way. We would guide them with signage. We would have restrooms in the park. We would have, picnic facilities. So if people are spending the day in Cornwall, they would be able to shop on Main Street. We're also going to have EV charging stations at Town Hall soon, so people would be able to, be guided, recharge their car, maybe grab a bite to eat, come back to the park, etc. So I do think the signage is really going to help, and I know obviously this is going to benefit residents, but I think it's going to benefit visitors as well, because we're going to certainly have the public restrooms, the places to picnic, etc.
And it's kind of centered to
Yeah.
the connector trail, so having those bathrooms there. are kind
Yeah,
of-
because without this, you kind of have a lot of spaced in between the town and the village. This is kind of like a stopping point before you get to the village. So,
Thanks. I think we can do one more question.
So this is getting way down into the weeds.
Yeah.
Has there been any discussion about materials used for the walkway, pervious, impervious?
So we're looking to make it ADA accessible. So in order to do that, we unfortunately have to make it impervious. So either concrete or asphalt. Obviously we'd look to make it either stamped asphalt or imprinted concrete.
any other questions? Oh, we're done. 5 minutes. is up?
Your time's up.
Your time is up. The LPC will have time at the end, hopefully, if these don't go too over, to ask to discuss amongst yourselves, certainly.
Well done.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
good job.
All right, and then the next up is Connector Trail, but while Sean is setting up, if you guys could, LPC, if you can do your evaluation.
Sean and Kristen, you're gonna handle the entire connector trail, town, village, everything? Okay, have at it.
It's the same as last time.
It's 11 by 17.
That's for the next project.
Exactly, yep. All right, is LPC, are you guys ready for the next one?
Yeah, I don't know if I can do it that way.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could do it blind.
You can bend the mic down too, yeah. Bend it down.
Attempt to not knock everything over. It's good, Sean, I'll figure it. All right, we'll attempt to not, actually, I'll just use my planning presentation voice, so I think that I'll be okay. All right, the Town Connector Trail is a trail that's going to be connecting. The intent is to connect all the way from one end of the town's business district through the town into the village, all the way to Donahue Park and the village's waterfront. It starts at Montefiore Hospital, which is on our plan here. Montefiore Hospital, it starts here with additional sidewalks and crosswalks at this location, all the way past Cornwall Shopping Plaza, which has a couple of crosswalks, but they'll be redone and improved. Coming down into Shady Ann Circle, there will be sidewalk and crosswalk improvements there. This is kind of an important focal point because there'll also be public art here. This is basically, as everyone knows, kind of the gateway to the town's business district. This bridge, which is currently going from Shady Ann Circle into Main Street, that is being replaced by the county. So that's a great opportunity there to kind of piggyback off that. That's going to be much improved from a visual perspective. Some lighting improvements there. Also Triangle Park, which is this triangle that you see on the map, is another opportunity to improve that. Grading, benches, trees. Sean, love that. Here's Loa. So right here off of Shady Ann Circle with trees and benches. Again, great little gateway to the town's business district here. This yellow square here is where the bridge is going to be replaced. New crosswalk here. The intent really, especially with this bridge being replaced, there's also other improvements that the county is making that will make this a bit more pedestrian friendly, closing down this very wide crossing right now. If you've ever, anyone that's ever tried to cross Shady Ann Circle, all of you are living, so probably none of you have done that. But it's not, you're taking your life in your hands currently. It's not terribly pedestrian friendly. It's not terribly inviting. So the idea really is to create a gateway at this location, public art, bringing in pedestrian friendly amenities, making that more pedestrian scale, working our way into the town's business district. In order to move, as we move down through the corridor, street trees, planter boxes, additional benches, trash receptacles, everything matching, everything looking uniform as kind of part of the creation of a corridor effect moving through the business district.
Did you want to talk about
well?
I mean, planners just aren't as excited about these civil engineering improvements. But yes, sidewalks, again, sidewalks, crosswalks, ADA compliance at all of, drop curbs at all of the crosswalks there.
And just connection to the Kovac building to use as municipal parking as well.
Right, that location is, comes around the back of the Cornwall Shopping Plaza. So Cornwall Shopping Plaza will be connected in several ways to the corridor in a new, safe, pedestrian-friendly manner, as will Hasbrook Avenue, as will Kovac, all of that connected to this new trail. So again, you can kind of see, even though these are kind of just symbols at this point, street trees, benches, trash receptacles moving through the corridor as you walk through it, inviting you to walk through the Cornwall Business District, all the way into new crosswalk. This is Riverlight Park, which you just heard about. So again, that synergy with that project. New crosswalk here, which will also connect Sandring House to this corridor. So everything kind of connecting, and you'll hear even as the rest of the evening goes by, you'll hear a lot of other projects, which is kind of everything kind of on the corridor. So everything connected, providing the ability to walk safely, not only for you and I to walk safely, but people of all abilities to walk safely with new drop curbs, pedestrian, safe crosswalks, all the way through the corridor. New crosswalk here, new crosswalk at the entrance to Munger College, Munger Cottage, and the library. Street trees, I believe the rest of that may be on the project you just heard about, so I won't talk about that. Next, we will move into the village.
Kristen, you have about a minute left.
Oh, all right,
Make it happen, Chris.
got it.
Make it happen.
Sorry, my village picture is smaller. I gave myself 8 minutes to prepare for this. All the way from the town and village line, all the way down to the riverfront. As everyone in this village knows, the main draw in this village is its beautiful environmental resources. That Hudson Valley riverfront, Hudson River waterfront, and Storm King Mountain, and the beautiful resources there. So that trail will go past all of that, down Hudson Street into the village's commercial district, all the way down to the waterfront. So not only bringing people from the business district down to the riverfront, but also bringing area tourists that are coming down to the riverfront, coming to hike Storm King Mountain, will be able to then get from that location into the business district, pulling you up, pulling you in, again, safely, being able to get all the way through the business district, and encouraging people to shop, to sit, to have coffee, to take out a book, to sit in front of and get tacos and sit in front of a restaurant. The bandstand, there'll be improvements there. That's kind of the key of the village's piece. More landscaping, more benches there. Restrooms, I believe, will be also at that location. Again, there are all of the events that the village holds down there, desperately needing restrooms.
And I'm sorry, Kristen,
All right,
unfortunately, we're out of time. We need to
that's
turn it over for questions.
As a planner, I fit a lot of buzzwords into a short amount of time.
Touchdown.
All right, well done.
All right.
Good job.
Amy, go ahead.
I wonder, it seems really ambitious and there's a lot of moving parts to this.
Yes.
And I'm wondering how you've broken down the budget and if there's an element of, must, nice, maybe in this budget, since it seems that it's covering a lot.
It's covering a lot of distance. I don't think that it is overly ambitious in terms of actual manpower and actual tangible things that are being created. We're not talking about replacing, if I was talking about replacing sidewalks from point A to the riverfront, that's probably something that would be not feasible. But the really expensive stuff and the stuff that takes a lot of like civil design is
It's only about
located.
800 feet. It's not the whole distance. It's not miles worth of sidewalk. It's only about 800 feet.
Right, so, and then in terms of purchasing things that match, obviously, our town, highway department, village, DPW will be doing a lot of the installation. That's kind of the town and the village's side of the contribution.
Or would be bid by a contractor that can easily.
And then you guys, as part of this project, you would also be hiring like a landscape architect or like an urban designer to come in and assist, right? Was that?
I think we're
part of
in
the-
kind of discussions there. I know that we do
Okay.
have a lot of local committees that are eager to help with a lot of that, particularly the landscaping piece of it. So I think the design may be coming from the civil aspect. Where are we putting trees? What type of species? Where are we putting versus planter boxes? Where it makes most sense to put a street tree versus where it makes sense to put pollinators, probably down in the village portion where there's more open space versus.
But regardless, you'd be coming up with a comprehensive plan. Like this is a very early discussion, so you'd be coming up with a comprehensive plan before, like, you know,
I think that, right, the
everything would be
additional
fully
planning-
planned out before they start implementing
Right, the
various
additional planning
projects.
piece is gonna
So-
be actually going through, where is it appropriate for a planter box versus pollinator? What is the appropriate species there? You know, where is the proper location for a bench? Because we have to maintain ADA width of our sidewalks. We have to maintain that 5 feet. So if you ever walk down the sidewalk, you know, there's some locations that's just not gonna be feasible. So where is a precise location for all of that? That's gonna be stuff that our town and village engineers are gonna work on the civil side to make sure that we're in compliance with any ADA code requirements.
And just to add to buttress this argument too, so we're gonna break ground next week. We gotta, because you guys always like when we aggregate grants. We got a $5,000 grant, the town did, the village got another one. We're going to use the line of demarcation, which is the village and town sign that's across from DB Mart. And we're gonna break ground on that next week to start this. We're gonna put a discrete planter box in with raised stone. We're gonna fill it, make a flower bed there, and then do 2 separate pollinator corridors on either side and kind of use that as the starting point for what we're gonna do for this project. So people can see it, get excited about it, and get it behind it. So that's where it's gonna start. It's gonna start next week. And we did it without New York Ford money. Susan loves that.
I don't know if
Idea.
I'm the moderator or
Yeah,
Jill
I
is.
have a question.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, so, speaking to the plantings and everything, which is I'm excited about. So how will the plantings, including the street trees and pollinators, be integrated into the project? And what are the environmental impacts, considerations?
So like I said, I think that there's going to be some additional investigation into the appropriateness of a street tree versus pollinators. I think that that's going to be something that's going to be worked on, but certainly going to be both of those items. Pollinators probably, again, more where there's more open space on the village side, bandstand down by Donahue Park, probably more opportunities for pollinators down there versus the business districts where you want to have more of a tidy streetscape and a street tree. I think that there's great environmental benefit, obviously, to both of those. They both have their own benefits. Obviously, just the benefit of trees, a reduce of heat island effect and all of those things, shade. But pollinators are a whole different bunch of benefits with habitat and species and attracting bees and things like that, which are great as long as you're not in front of a business. Again, why we're moving the pollinators away from those. So I think they also have stormwater management benefits. They also have like visual impact benefits. So I think that there's planners go on and on about trees and pollinators and nerdy things like that. But I think that there's great benefit all the way around on those.
Fortunately, that's the end of our 5 minutes.
Could we have enough time for one quick?
We could do a quick question.
It's gotta be quick.
So you're going all the way down to the river here, and a few times you've mentioned ADA compliant walkways and whatnot.
Oh, I'm going to get to this question.
You
You're
gotta-
ahead of me. You're ahead of me on. I know where it's going. Go ahead.
I mean, you've got to pour an entire sidewalk going down Dock Hill Road. which is-
Separate project, Jimmy. That's gonna come up under the, it's gonna come up. It's a separate, the Dock Hill Trail is gonna be separate. And then that's where your questions are gonna come in. How are you gonna make that ADA compliant? And that is going to be, that's gonna be a tough question. And
Great.
we'll discuss that when we get there.
Great.
All right, LPC, you have 2 minutes to do your evaluation. And then while they're doing their evaluation, next up we have Cornwall Imaginarium. And then just so people can get ready, after the Imaginarium, we have Storm King Theater, Main Street Hotel, and then Vet Rep.
All right.
So I apologize in advance.
No apologies, Sergeant. No apologies.
So something happened to my backing it didn't make it intact from the architect. So you got a classy piece of cardboard here, and I apologize, everybody has to look at that. It was a lot classier about.
Make
3
it
hours
work,
ago.
Ranger. Make it work.
Yeah, we'll see what we can do. Anyway, so that aside, I'll take their 2-minute window to kind of spread this out a little.
I honestly think that we're gonna have to have, even if like design sense on the trail finished.
100%.
So I think we're gonna use.
Put the paper in front, 100%.
Agree.
Agree.
There we go. Beautiful.
I'll hold it for you.
Sort of.
I'll hold it.
You got it, really?
Yeah.
Oh, you're the
Because
best.
I think the S word synergy is a big piece of
Yeah.
this, and I think that is.
No, I'm glad you said
Really
that.
should've
because
framed
I was
We
gonna-
can't just let, clubs.
Yeah, 100%. I'm with you.
Hey, fellow coach, yeah. Should be noted, New York youth football is suffering a lot right now. We got 3 coaches here in this room right now.
Yeah.
Just so you know.
Hey, we're
D1
4-0
is-
right now, baby.
It's
We're
true.
ready.
That is
We're
true.
ready to take on Lords.
All right, all right. No more, no football here.
No football.
Sorry. All right, LPC, we're ready?
Okay.
All right,
All
go
good?
ahead.
Okay, so I'll make this as short and sweet as I can. There are a lot of changes to our project just based off the feedback that I got from you all. So thank you for that, but I want to talk you through the overall 30,000 foot view of the project and then the granular details. I've lived in Cornwall since 2016. I was never here physically. Every year that I've lived here, I was deployed with the military overseas until 2021 when I got out. Since I got out in 21, one of the first opportunities I had was to buy the Lemon Building. And the moment I bought it, I would go inside and I would crack open the door, and inevitably, people would come up the steps, knock on the door, open it, and ask if they could just quickly look around. Because either they lived here their whole lives and never been inside the building, or they were visiting and were really curious about what was in here, or maybe they were in the at West Point and were stationed here, and had always walked by, but were curious. A couple things came to me from that. One, this was a magnetic building. It was incredibly interesting to people. People were curious about it, and they had a vested interest in it. The other thing was the wide diversity of people that were interested in it. And what I wanted to do was build a space that was going to have a shared culture for this town between all the disparate entities that occupy this place, both as tourists, as military personnel, and as locals. This is the Cornwall Imaginarium. It is a place that I envision to platform artists and artisans that will inspire that sense of shared culture in Cornwall. West Point's world-class military community, Storm King, a world-class artistic community, all the disparate threads of people that live here. We want to find the people that are going to help bring that together in a place that you can loiter in, hang out in, and explore and enjoy frequently. I will work with anybody. It's open to any number of artists and artisans, but I prefer veterans only because they're a drastically underrepresented minority in both the arts and the artisanal community. So I want to look for them first. But in order to execute this, it's going to be done in 2 phases. That's a change from what we've been talking about before. To explain both phases, I need to start with phase 2 so you understand phase 1. Phase 1 is all I'm asking help for from New York forward. There's no phase 0, which maybe there should be, but that was me buying the building and putting the money into it I have, but we'll ignore that for the time being. But to understand phase 1, let's talk about phase 2. This is phase 2. Rooftop dining, exploiting and taking advantage of an amazing, iconic location, and providing something world-class dining options to an area that desperately needs it. This can be one restaurant, it can be multiple food vendors, multiple artisans, it could be Culinary Institute trained chefs, breweries, wineries. We're talking to all of them. We're sussing out all those possibilities. But regardless, this is a space that we are absolutely wedded to. However, to execute this, I need to build out the basement, the first floor, the second floor, and this elevator contraption on the back end, plus second ingress egress. So in order to do that, it made more sense to break up into a phase 1. Phase 1, it has 2 parts. One, the interior of the building, which needs complete infrastructure overhaul, plumbing, electrical, lighting, HVAC, etc. There's asbestos, not a ton, but a little bit, enough that I gotta spend a little bit and get that taken care of. The second piece is the parking, obviously, that we have to expand, and we have the room to expand a lot of parking, but it has to be done. That's all in phase 1. Then phase 2, we can move on to the rooftop. For phase 1, all told, we estimate that's about $675,000. I'm already committed to paying off the architectural myself and taking care of the asbestos, because that has to get done sooner rather than later, which knocks down my ask for New York forward to about 575. I'll have exact numbers in an updated spreadsheet to you, Jill, and to Christy. This is all based off of Christy's email to me today too, so a lot of stuff has been very current and moving parts.
Great.
But that's the most recent ask, and then following that, what we want to do in this space is build it, obviously, so we get a lot of traffic and people can't hang out there. So when I look at that need and what my skill set is, the amount of veteran artists I know, and where a lot of my bandwidth has been spent, what I'm going to do is bring in world-class veteran artists and make this an art gallery, because it will be a constantly changing landscape that people can traffic in, hang out in, spend no money in, no entrance fee. And the only thing for people that aren't necessarily into art is we have this vault smack in the middle that messes up every bit of site planning we could do. So this is going to be the world's smallest bar. We're going to put shot glasses in there, and we're going to have it just as a place that people can traffic in, spend time in. Everybody loves to be in there, so we want to take advantage of that. We have a small lounge area here that people can hang out in, but again, it's something that's a low investment on every person's part just to come in and spend time. That's our phase one, and then phase two will be about $634,000 of my own money to build out phase two when that happens. That's the Cornwall Imaginarium.
You're done.
Any questions you have?
Can I start?
Please.
CPM, you have expanded the bandwidth on the term veteran. Explain to the LPC what you consider the term veteran to mean.
So in this case, veteran is literally veteran. However, I do have a very big soft spot for immediate family members of veterans, especially considering the proximity of West Point and the amount of underemployed or unemployed spouses on West Point who can't get work. This is a chance for them to execute their dreams. And we're trying to build that environment as a key piece of the societal fabric in this area. And we want to make sure that that's open and available to them.
What about first responders?
Absolutely. I mean, the entire profession of arms is something I care a lot about. In this case, I do have to prefer veterans, but yes, the entire profession of arms is something that as you and I know, we both care a lot about that.
Good, thank you.
Sure.
Front of the building, it's gonna be maintained as is.
The front of the building?
Front of the building, yeah.
Yes, so the glib answer is there's gonna be awesome improvements and nothing that's gonna be aesthetically ridiculous. We love the lemon brick, we love that door. We love the alarm clock. We love, all the cool aspects of it from the original 1911 building we wanna keep. There are things that are gonna get beautified, ADA compliance, making sure that people, with handicaps can get up the steps. We're gonna do stuff about that. But yes, absolutely, the preservation of this aesthetic is absolutely part of the magnetism of the building, and we want to make sure we keep that.
Good question.
Can you talk to project readiness in terms of, like, even just the ADA question? I'm looking at that, like, that's gonna take a whole lot of study to make that happen. I'm not sure it's gonna happen on the front door. To the extent of not having started the approvals process and not necessarily having design, or maybe you do have a design and.
Yeah, so we have an architect, and we've been working design pretty strongly. The key piece with the approvals process is right now we are multi-use. We do have a lot of things in place already. However, for an art gallery and for liquor space, we do need special permits. We'll absolutely be going through the wickets on that sooner than later, because we do want this pending New York Forward's decision, if and when that happens. The second we go to contract, we intend to break ground and start building this out. So I'm tentatively penciling that in spring of '24. So we're trying to reverse engineer everything to make sure we're good to go in that time frame. But my architect's working with an engineer. We're working to build out exactly what's going to be needed for exactly what you're saying, the ADA piece, second egress.
What phase of design are you with your architect?
We're still in the planning phase because we really just wrapped up. We sprinted to kind of get all this together in the last couple of months. So that's where we are right now. Fortunately, he and I have a good working relationship and a bit of a history. So there's a pretty quick flash to bang with it. But yes, we do anticipate that a spring '24 break ground is not unrealistic.
Thanks.
Sure. Thanks.
Speaking to the architect,
Yes.
I was just wondering, what's his experience of implementing projects of this scope, historical restoration, restaurants?
Thank you for asking. So I actually took notes on this because I wanted to make sure I was clear. So a couple of major, I'll give you just quick highlights. He did Villa Positano as a restaurant. He did the Clemson Brewery out in Middletown. That's a huge site. I mean, like, looks like a castle or a prison. Anyway, so he did that. So he's done big restaurant projects. But as far as renovation of historic sites, although Clemson Brewery is that as well. If you know Rest Haven in Monroe, that was an 1820s building. It's a huge site. He did that. He also did the Luke and Friends childcare site, which is a huge 1920s barn. And then his offices are on the National Registry. And he did those, and he was able to work with the Parks Department and figure all that out. So he has a lot of experience with very sophisticated renovation projects.
We have time for about one more question.
Sure.
With the, we'll say, mix of nonprofit, profit, with the limited profit scope in phase one, how do you get to phase two money-wise?
Okay, so just to semantically clear up, everything we're doing here is for profit. There will be, be a commercial gallery. It will not be a nonprofit gallery.
Okay,
And
just no admission charge, got it.
no admission charge, that's right. And I work very closely with a gallery owner who's had a successful gallery in Washington, DC and Charleston, South Carolina for 25 years. So we have a lot of mentorship and a lot of good, positive build out that's happening with that.
I misinterpreted your no admission.
No worries, no, I'm glad you
comment, too.
clarified. No, it's all right, yeah,
Okay.
no, that's great.
Just one more question. So do you anticipate going for any additional funding, like through the CFA process, through, through other means, or you're just looking at New York Forward now? Is I guess your only, government funding?
New York Forward's my 50-meter target because, I get the mountains there. But yes, absolutely. I mean, if there's other avenues open as CFA and all that, absolutely. Yes, the quicker we can get to phase two,
Sure.
the better. So absolutely, but I do also see a way forward with New York Forward, that even just this alone will do wonders to get us to phase two pretty quickly.
Sure. I mean, obviously offline, we should talk about CFA for the next round.
Sure.
Yeah.
Can I ask whoever is driving the slide deck, can we go back one to see the project description again, please? Thank you.
So just as you'll note with those phase one costs, my ask is actually about 100,000 lower than that now.
You said around 575.
About 575. Yeah. The total cost remains the same.
You have to explain 50-meter target for those that are not military folks here that understands that's the low-hanging fruit. That's the closest thing to attain because it's the closest target.
Except for Jim, who knows 5-meter targets.
Well,
So you know, way
yeah,
to take, 5-meter targets.
exactly.
It's a little different thing.
Exactly.
Do we have to explain metric? We all speak Canadian. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to ask the LPC to do your evaluation, please. Thank you for your presentation.
Well done.
Thanks a lot.
And next up is we have Storm King Theater. And then just as a reminder, after Storm King Theater, we have Main Street Hotel and then Vet Rep.
Ready?
All right, I
Let's
think we're
go.
ready. Go ahead.
Okay. So a little bit about the building. It was built in 1936.
Intro.
Oh, I'm sorry.
For those that don't know you, I know you, but
Raymond Inoni. I've owned the building since 1998. The building itself, when we purchased it, it was condemned in foreclosure. All of the stones on the facade were falling into the street, and they were considering demoing the building. So when we purchased it, we really didn't have a plan, and we focused on stabilizing the building and restoring the facade. That occurred over about a year to 18 months. We did, during that time, go to planning board. We secured approvals for, we had a potential tenant that wanted to do ballroom dancing and different types of entertainment in the theater, as well as the restaurant. We ended up completing the building, completed the restaurant restoration in 2000, and it opened as a restaurant. Between 2000 and 2006, we probably made a half a dozen various planning board applications. including an apartment, a deli that's now operating here, and what I refer to as the upper room, which is part of this, was renovated, I would say, as a white box and attached to the restaurant at about 2005, 2006, when Nicky Correa was operating there. And he used it for various entertainment, catering, other uses. Again, it was never really done correctly. It was just a white box. It's fallen back in disrepair again. I'll show you the floor plan to get a better idea of what we're talking about. The orange area, that's the mezzanine, which was originally the projection room and concessions for the theater itself. The pink area is now the deli. The green area is the restaurant itself. The original theater, I know it's a little small, was the entire building. The kitchen area of the restaurant was the actual stage. And below that, there were dressing rooms that you access through hatches that exist in the basement. So through prior renovations, bathrooms and kitchen areas got built out there, so we kind of left it as it was. So the area in blue is the upper room, which does attach to the restaurant but is not currently in use. The area in yellow is the lower room that we hope to create a black box theater that currently now is just used for storage. So the building has been receiving ongoing improvements. It's self-sustaining. You know, the tenants that we have take care of all the expenses and a little positive cash flow. And as time and money permit, we continue to make improvements to the building. We just redid the neon sign this year. We did some more improvements to the deli, put a new roof on the apartment, and we're trying to move it forward. The theater, the black box, that's what we call it, it's basically a flex space. I did a restoration in 2009 to the Newburgh train station. And the Solloways, they were Cornwall residents at the time, started a theater group there. They did instruction, performances, and they introduced me to the black box, which is basically a black room. Has sound, you know, lighting, and is a flex space that can be used for movies, for performances, or just as a room to rent. And I learned from my experience there how much demand there actually is for this empty space. We are going to make some improvements to the building. We've had series of site plan approvals. We currently have an unbuilt sidewalk approved for the rear of the building, which is the rear exit that we were going to incorporate with this and create a second handicap access. We're going to be adding additional handicap bathrooms and proper sound system, proper lighting, upgrading the utilities. We're going to replace the natural gas heating systems with high efficiency electric. The area is basically uninsulated. We're going to insulate the ceilings and as many of the walls as we can access and provide fire suppression for the area.
All right, and I think that's about all the time we have, but if the LPC has any questions, we have a few minutes for questions.
Ray, can you talk a little bit more about the black box idea and the co-benefits that it offers to the community?
So my daughter, who couldn't be here tonight, is going to be managing a nonprofit that will be operating that space. So the space will be available to all. The objective is to create a space that doesn't add to the debt or the financial burden of me as the owner, so we can pass the space along at little or no cost. We anticipate, you know, the insurance, utilities, additional taxes be less than $1,000 a month, and we can pretty much cover that with no use with what we have now with our current cash flow. So it'll hopefully encompass all movie, live performances, instruction, and again, the room could be available for the general public depending on its use. The upper room will be managed by the restaurant. They currently have to do some entertainment now. They want to expand that. Problem is they have to shut down half the restaurant whenever they do a party or an event. And when Nikki opened this room up, it was very successful. They kept the restaurant going and added that to it. And they have the deli to service as well from this side. So we think there's like a synergy that would work kind of a private, public space.
Two questions. What are the dimensions of what would be the black box room?
Yes, 2,000 square feet for the larger room and just over 1,000 for the upper room.
Okay. And then main entrance would be
Main entrance,
in the
we're
rear?
the main entrance is gonna be through the
Through
original circular
Through the
entrance.
vestibule?
Yes, there's a hallway now that goes through
Mhm.
between the deli and here. And there's a secondary entrance through the restaurant itself. So depending on the event, if it's sponsored by the restaurant, they may come in through the lounge area. So there's numerous ways in. If it's a private use, maybe instruction, we're gonna have a sidewalk to the rear entrance with a separate entrance there.
Right. For the construction, do you have any contingency plans for the renovation if, there's extra cost or maybe a low period of time of the
Yeah.
venue being used or anything?
So I'm in the construction business. I've been in this business since 1997. I've done numerous restorations. I'm obviously very familiar with this building. And I did a very detailed takeoff on what needs to be done on the theater. But having said that, we have some cash reserves within the company itself. We have a positive cash flow, as well as, my ability to subsidize some of the costs. So we're doing it now on an ongoing basis, but we just can't get over the hump to do something to this level.
You said 2,000 square feet, if it were set up like the top right there with the chairs or whatever, what would be the approximate capacity for?
Under 100, but probably right at 100, depending on where we haven't concluded. We may do a modular stage, that's what we had at the Railroad Playhouse, or we may put a stage along the back wall. That's
Right.
gonna dictate. the
Obviously,
number of
different
seats.
events will have different
Yes.
capacities, but yeah.
Yes, but the 2,000 will easily hold 100.
Okay, great, thank you.
Ray, do me a favor, flip that around real quick. I'm just gonna say this because for the village, this is an important property. The building that Mr. Yanone owns right there, we don't know, we've done some research, but one of the first movies that was ever shown there was the 1954 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne, when that was a movie theater. And the building to the next of it, Ray, I think you own that one too, correct?
No, that's where Louis has Pepitini's now.
Louis does.
Yes.
So that is the old riverbank, and back in the 19th century, that was Village Hall, which you're sitting in right now. We were in that building until 1992. And then shortly after that, it became a bank, which is why there's a vault in there. But Village Hall was on the bottom floor of that building. The upper floor was the police department. That corner right there, I use it all the time, and I hope I'm not overusing it, is the hood ornament to the village. That's where we do the ball drop. That's where we do all of our holiday festivities. We do the bandstand stuff. That building right there. And Ray, I appreciate it. I know you've done a lot of work on the Storm King sign to restore it back to its original glory. Neon ain't easy to replace these days.
There's nothing like it, though.
No, there's nothing like it. But that building right there really is for the village. The town is different. That is our hood ornament. So
So I actually have a question, I guess, for the state. So obviously we're building a black box theater and we're doing some other stuff, but do you look at who's ultimately gonna operate the black box theater and the staffing? Is that gonna come into this, or is that not a factor? Because you're basically looking to run like the Railroad Playhouse here, except that, and I'm very familiar with my friends were the solid ways, and I went to many events there, so it was very successful when it was there, and this would be great for Cornwall.
We spoke about this,
Yeah.
and Seth offered some guidance
Yeah.
when we get to that point.
Yeah,
But I think most of this is gonna be done with community groups.
sure.
So depending on whether it's a movie, enthusiast, or, depending on what group is looking to do a performance, I think that the nonprofit my daughter was gonna be establishing
Sure.
will manage the time and use of that space.
Okay.
Ray, what's the date of that? Circa what? What is that? Circa
1936.
nineteen
That's when it was
thirty?
completed, yeah.
Nineteen
I think
thirty-six.
the movie was 34, not 54.
All right, we're gonna let Susan answer the question and then we have to move on.
Yeah, supervisor, I would say that like having like a tenant and operating plan, some sense of programming is something that the state does consider to make sure that the space is used after award if awarded.
Good. Okay.
All
Thank you,
right.
sir.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you. LPC, if you can do your evaluation. And then next up, we have the hotel. And then after the hotel, we have vet rep and then branding, marketing, wayfinding. coming up.
100%.
All right, LPC, are we ready? All right, go ahead. Thank you.
Good evening. Bart Lansky for Two Girls, One Boy Holdings LLC, the owner of 317 Main Street, which is the proposed Main Street Hotel. And I was just listening if that Storm King building is the hood ornament, I think this is the engine.
Well played, sir.
So
Well damn played.
this is
You're
this
an attorney, I guess. Yeah, I
This-
should have known.
This is the use which supports the rest of the projects. There's a lot of good projects in just the first half of this. And this is a area with a lot of potential. But it keeps the people not only here from when they come to see the other projects, not only for West Point and Storm King, it keeps them to the next morning. And they're still here. And it also brings in business travelers and other people to the area. And so the project, for those of you who know the Berniker Dodge building, it was foreclosed upon around 2018. It was purchased by our applicant in 2019. There was remediation completed in 2020. And we've been through the planning board process for about a year now. We've received our zoning variances. We've received a parking waiver. We've received a state variance for our fire truck to get through. We're getting very close to doing our public hearing, and I'm expecting January, February to have final approvals from the town of Cornwall Planning Board and be able to be ready to build a hotel. Prior to spending all that money, we did feasibility studies. We'd met with the various hoteliers, we did research. The conclusions we reached was that the best product available for this site was a boutique Hilton. They have a tapestry collection. It's the highest standard in the industry. And the reason, and Hilton has its highest standards for hotels, and they also have the best back office, which means you make your reservations online and we pick up business travelers on the off nights. And so I know feasibility is important. We have an owner here who's putting $2 million in equity into the project. We're asking for $1 million. There are private and public aspects to this project. As I said, it's going to support the rest of the projects, but we're also intending to build town parking and provide 30 spaces on an adjacent lot. And then this is a 52-room hotel with a restaurant and with the rest of the services. And we are looking to have it built within 1 year of starting construction. So we're hoping April approximately to start construction in '24 and be completed in April of '25. It's a big endeavor. We have a couple of things which we're changing based upon this application. We understand that the state has a decarbonization effort, and so we are now planning on doing LEED certification, which adds not only some paperwork, but it also improves the environmental performance of the property and adds some cost to it. We have, with the town parking, we're also looking to coordinate with the town on their stormwater work. Everybody knows there was stormwater issues not that long ago, some of which go behind the adjacent property, which has a common beneficial owner, and is part of the town parking. So those are the main. 1 minute, good. So the catalytic effect, we're taking a property which is paying only a few $1,000s in property taxes. I know because I did the tax grievance, and we're gonna look to have, our estimate is over $700,000 in property and sales tax a year to come out of this property by itself. And the estimates that we get from Hilton is that there'll be about 300 people a day walking around the village and the town and using the rest of the businesses. 300 people a week, I mean, who are staying, 300 people a week, I'm sorry, 50 a day, who are working, who are then patronizing the local businesses. And the town parking will also help the local businesses. And we think it's a good project. And our feasibility study shows over 85% occupancy rates, and we only need to be around 60% to earn a profit.
Question, sir. So this is not the planning board and the zoning board of appeals in the town, which I'm sure you're quite familiar with, and you've delicately threaded that needle. To the naysayers, I think it's a good project, but I like all 10 of the projects. I'm not allowed to put my finger on the scale anywhere. The question to the people that argue that in the town of Cornwall, anything over 3 stories is not what Cornwall is. How do we argue that and say this is going to be 4 stories? How do we argue the necessity for a 4-story hotel as opposed to a 3-story hotel? What's the argument?
Well, it's a 5-story hotel.
5-story hotel.
So, and your planner, your town board, they created the zoning. We are within the height on the zoning, right? We are 55 feet. And so we are conforming there. We're conforming as a hotel. This is not a use that we made up. We went through the zoning code before we started our process. This is what your town intellectuals chose.
So you're saying 5, but I'm looking at the bottom level, and then I'm looking at 3 windows above that.
And then that top, that mansard, has, this is kind of a meeting space overlooking.
And that's the 5th floor.
That's the 5th floor.
Understood.
So it reads like a 4-story, but it is in fact a 5-story.
You answered my question.
Anybody, the tapestry does not say Hilton on it. We're actually thinking about the name Berniker because that's what most people around here know. And we're looking into creating that as the local brand. Of course, it's Berniker, then trademark Hilton, but it's the tapestry brands don't read as Hiltons.
And could you elaborate a little bit more on what would the first floor would be public facing?
So public facing, as you come in off the street, we have a sculpture garden and we have a little bit of outdoor seating. And then to the left, you have a lobby and someone to welcome you in. And to the right, there is a restaurant bar. And so all Hiltons require to have some kind of bar and food. And that's your main entryway. And the idea is that this is not out on 9W or out on any state road. It's not Legoland. This is our downtown, and this brings people back in.
I have some budget questions.
Sure.
So it said $8 million was your total project cost on the previous slide.
Yes.
And does that include all your site improvements as well?
Well, I do have to admit that some of the numbers are a moving target. And so since we prepared things and started this process, it has been $8 million. The lead certification is going to be a little bit more on our budget. And as we finalize our agreement on town parking and stormwater, there could be modest changes as well. But it is 7,000 square foot on the floor, 5 stories, 35,000 feet. I have. So $200 a foot gets you $7 million. just for rough numbers.
It's ground up construction?
You have an existing structure, and you have a lot of existing land. Like we're not doing full removals everywhere. We have some existing parking. We have some existing structure. As a reference point, with a client, I constructed a building in Beacon, a condo building, which recently opened a year or so ago, and we constructed that for 150 a foot. Prices have changed. That was just before the pandemic. This is different, but we have an existing structure. And one of the things which makes this project feasible is Sonata Group is a general contractor. So you're used to numbers which are built from architects with everything completely subbed out. This is intended to be built by somebody who knows how to build.
Parking on an adjacent lot, is that represented in there? Is that two lots together, or where?
No, this is the existing lot, and the adjacent lot is over here. So that is 325 Main Street. If you know the building, it used to be the law office. And there is a incline there, and the idea is to bring that down to the grade of the hotel and have some communication with the ambulance corps behind.
Who owns that property?
The same beneficial owner, different entity.
We have time for one more LPC question.
Sorry, one more. Environmental concerns as far as construction, being a former auto garage, I assume with the purchase, they went through phase one environmental study at minimum, probably a phase 2.
1, 2, and 3.
Are there
And
mitigations?
we've already completed the mitigation, and we've closed 2 spills.
Okay, great, thank you.
Speaking to the parking,
Mhm.
could you give us a little bit more information about its capacity, the availability for public or leasing to the?
So the parking on the location at 317 Main Street is intended for the hotel. And that's been resolved at the planning board level, and that is sufficient for the hotel. And then the parking on 325 is an additional 30 spots, which are to be monitored and by the town under whatever rules and regulation they impose.
Actually, just one more real quick that I wanted to, so you know how much approximately you think you're gonna do in room sales in any given year?
I don't have the figures in front of me except for the occupancy rates. But we've had a hospitality consultant all along.
Sure.
And we did our feasibility study. And for those of you who know this market, everybody knows we're going to be full when West Point has events, with Storm King, with the Leaf Peepers, and there's some modest downtimes. And with our consultations with Hilton, we expect their back engine to fill those times.
Is it a fait accompli that there is going to be a hotel tax imposed by the town?
So the state recently gave the approval for the town to put in a hotel tax up to 5%. So whatever, let's say you have 2 million a year in room sales, the town gets 5% on top of that. So I guess you should maybe update your figures.
Yeah.
Add that in to the benefit for the town, because that's going to be a pretty sizable number too.
That's the turbo boost on the
Goes
engine.
into the general fund, so it's
Yeah.
town village,
Yeah,
correct?
town village, exactly.
And then the village would consider doing something similar, even though, we only have painters, but, okay.
Hey, that's right.
Those out-of-towners.
All right, I'm sorry to cut you guys off. I think we're a little over time. I thank you.
Thank you.
for your
Thank you,
presentation.
sir.
LPC, if you can do your evaluation, and while you're doing that, I will call up vet rep. Come on up. And then after vet rep, we're going to do branding, marketing, wayfinding, then the small project fund, and then Dock Hill Road and Donahue Farm. We're halfway through.
Do you want your paper?
Yes.
All right, are we ready, LPC? Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. I'm Lila Faint. I'm the managing director for Vet Rep Theater, and we are a nonprofit 501c3. We were established in February of 2001, and 2021, sorry, not 2001, 2021. And our primary mission is to work with veterans to assess, develop, and produce their works through live theater and other live events. One of the big things that many of you probably know from here, we have a current rented space at 16 Quaker Avenue where we put on shows in a 16-seat theater. One Angola, which is the property that we own now as of February 2022, and the property that we were asking for help with, is it allows us to actually have a larger theater, a larger space, and to do more of our work. One of the biggest things that a lot of times the people here don't necessarily see that we do is that we have 7 plays that were written by our veterans that are in various stages of production. But because our current space is so small, we're not actually able to present that in a feasible way. And so, for example, in April of this year, we did a staged reading at Penguin Rep down in Stony Point with Edie Falco as the lead. And we had to do it down there because we didn't have the space here. So that allows us to be able to come up here in Cornwall at our home and bring that kind of revenue, artistic value, and prestige to this little part of our town. So that's what we're looking for there. We look at this project in 3 phases. Phase 1 was actually buying the building, which VetRep completely owns outright. And then we've been going through planning board and rezoning in order to get as part of the general business district and to be rezoned as a theater, which we have conditional approval of that, pending a crosswalk addition that we have to look at that, and as well as some additional issues with doing a water main with the village in order to have our fire suppression system put in. And those are just some minor things, but we do have conditional approval for our site plan at that point. Phase 2 is the big piece that we're asking for help with New York Forward. And we lovingly call this, the first phase, we kind of lovingly call it the lipstick on a pig, where we're just trying to get into the building and to be able to operate the way we are right now, just with the existing conditions of the building. But phase 2 is what we're asking here. It's more like plastic surgery on a pig, just kind of getting it to the point where we can have a 30-seat theater and operate, be able to bring in, like we talked about, being able to do those readings, be able to do that development work with our veteran playwrights here in Cornwall, instead of having to go to the city, having to go to Stony Point, having to go to different places. Down in Rockland County, we've done some things with the community college as well. And so that allows us to do that. So it'll give us a 30-seat theater, give us some rehearsal spaces, give us our office spaces that we need, and abilities to do classes. We do acting classes, we do playwriting classes, and it allows us to have that space to be able to really enact our mission to a fuller place. Phase 3 is a long-term kind of dream where we can get up to 50 seats and really completely expand, finish out that 3rd floor. If you've seen the Shadane House, if you could go to the next slide so we could just see that. It's got kind of an odd roof line. We can extend that 3rd floor, kind of complete it and make it as to one cohesive unit within that, because that's the building itself has had several renovations done to it in different time periods. And so now we can make that one cohesive unit, one cohesive operating status. So that kind of gives you an idea of what we have now and what we're looking to try to make happen. We can go back to the prior slide. So those are what we're asking. Our ask for New York Forward, the total cost of phase 2 is $700,000. We've secured funding for some of that. $625,000 is what we're asking for New York Forward to provide. So some things that I'd like to talk about in addition is the job projections. Once we have that, we bring a lot of actors. All our actors come from the city or professional actors. We do have some that are local here in Cornwall. We've been able to find and root out and bring to the stage, but they've come up from New York City. And one of the biggest things that we found is a lot of them turn it into a weekend. They come up for the Saturday show and they have their friends that come along with them and they stay over the weekend and they check out Cornwall because they've fallen in love with it. They go down to the shops to go grab a coffee, to go grab dinner for the day, because we do rehearsals all day long. So they're starting to find and see and tell their friends about this. We have guest directors that sometimes come in to direct some of our shows that we're currently doing. And as we get larger and we do more things, we can do that. Again, as we get larger, we're going to need more proper stage hands, things like that. And we want to create a veterans job program so that we can actually go through apprenticeship, stage managers, set, lighting design, sound design, those kind of things, all of that, bringing that in and focusing on veterans and giving them jobs through that piece. And that's it.
LPC questions?
Lila, when are you guys gonna actually physically occupy the Shadane space, unless I missed it?
Yep. So the hope is that by April of 2024, so
This
this
coming
coming
April.
spring,
Got it.
we should be done with phase one, occupied, and we'll be in there. We'll release the rented space and we can be in there. That's kind of the lipstick on a pig phase, and we're just kind of in there. And then as we're going through phase two with New York Ford, we can be doing our architectural to get us into phase two. And then we try to work that around our programming so that we don't interrupt programming significantly and try to kind of phase that in. But we should be able to break ground summer, fall of 2025.
Got it.
So I had some questions for you, but after hearing you speak, I've changed my question too. I heard you talk about classes.
Yes.
Now, will those classes be available to the community, or is it for the vets themselves?
So the acting classes currently are open to community 18 and over. So we already are offering those, and those will continue while we go. Yeah, every Saturday, 10 to 12. But the playwriting classes, because a big meat of our mission is working with the playwrights and getting their plays onto the stage, those are reserved for veterans. And kind of going back to the original question from a couple of projects ago, we really think of veterans as a very broad thing. Military veterans, uniformed services, immediate family members, DoD contractors, that kind of thing. We've kind of got a very broad definition of who veteran
First
is.
responders.
First responders, that kind of a thing. And so it's a much broader definition of that. But veteran just is a lot easier versus saying that long line every single time.
Just to make sure I understand, so all of the activities that have expenses connected to them are happening through the 501c3, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
And thinking about the current parking area for the building, is that going to be expanded or?
Correct. On the current site plan, right now, what we currently have is 12 spaces at One Angola. The site plan has expanded to 28 spaces. We have quite a lot of land behind the area. It's wooded right now. We have quite a lot of land, and so that allows us to have that 28 spaces back there. Yes, ma'am.
Can you talk a little bit to your operating model? I mean, obviously, having a building, it increases your expense.
Yes.
You know, it sounds like you've had a really lovely track record, but you know, how do you feel the capacity to grow this way?
Absolutely. So one of the things that we have found is just in general, like we're starting to grow in programming in the sense of ticket sales, things like that. We're getting to the point where we're sold out. We have wait lists. So there's a need, a community need for wanting to have more space. We know that that's going to increase costs. Once we turn 3, we're going to be eligible for Schubert and some additional big grants. And so that's going to really help us with programming operational costs as well. And so that as we're growing, we're going to be able to move into more significant grants and being able to do that. We also have some additional monies that we have set aside specifically for that we're investing and making sure that we have the monies to be able to operate. Oh.
With the parking?
Yes.
With your expansion, how do you plan on connecting it to Continental, and how many spaces are you guys planning on having?
Yeah, so Continental actually will become the primary entry and exit point. We want to make Angola only an entry point because it is kind of difficult for sightlines to be able to see out. So there'll be a curb cut there towards the back, almost close to where the residential is right there. There's a great place to be able to pop in and create that main driveway there. Right off there, we've already got the sidewalk that's there, so it's just a matter of a curb cut, and it's on the site plan. I think it should be coming your way soon.
I would also just add too, and this you kind of will see this as part of the connector trail. The goal is to try to be able to get people from the municipal lot that the hotel is proposing to build safely down Hasbrook, across Continental, over to Vet Rep. So there's going to be additional places for people to park, on Main Street and then walk to the. And then I know just because I've been, dealing with it, there's also the, Cornwall Shopping Plaza. If they could work an agreement out with them and we can get a crosswalk connecting the shopping plaza to this property, people could park there as well and walk across the street.
Correct. There's a
that would be
crosswalk
another-
currently in that site plan at that place as well.
Yeah.
How many projected parking spots?
28 spaces are in the site plan, and at most the theater will be 50 seats.
Okay, we have time for one more question.
One more question.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for
Thank you, Lily.
consideration.
All right, LPC, if you can do your evaluation, and we have branding, marketing, and wayfinding is next.
All right, I'll get up.
Is that Is that you?
That's
I
Josh.
guess that's me, but it's kind of a joint town village.
That's Josh.
It's Josh.
That's Josh.
I'm gonna talk to him. I'm just voting right now.
Okay, okay.
I have not yet, and I'll give you my reasons why.
Okay, so establish and implement a branding, marketing, and wayfinding strategy. So if we look at the Peekskill DRI or the Haverstraw DRI, one of the things that was in
Can you
both of,
translate DRI?
sorry, Downtown Revitalization Initiative, that's, yeah. So before New York Forward, that was what we had available in New York Forward. We were actually round one of New York Forward.
Correct.
And so those two DRIs, they had a branding, marketing, and wayfinding strategy, because one of the things that you'll find is that when you're doing all this great stuff, you need to have a strategy to brand and market and to help people find the stuff that you're doing that's great as part of this, process. And so we would like to, Cornwall already has an existing brand. I think we know what it is, but I think we need to refine it a little bit better. We need to put it through a bit of a process, I think, to come up with a brand and with different marketing collateral, create a brand kit. We also need to figure out, once we determine, we all know that Cornwall's a family-friendly place. People come here for cultural attractions like Storm King Arts Center. They come here because they're going to West Point, games and whatnot. They're coming here for eco-tourism, kayaking, hiking, or, in some cases, they're just coming, they're passing through because they're going to Legoland, or they're going to the Newburgh waterfront, but we want to be able to come up with a way to basically bring people in, keep them here and have them find what they need to find here in Cornwall. And that's going to take, I think, a concerted effort. I think the town and the village, with its various committees, we've taken it as far as we can. We're not professionals at this. We have limited resources, and I think the only way we're really going to get to where we have to go is to properly fund this. A number of you have said that this might not even be enough, and I think you're right. This probably needs to be pushed up a little bit if we're going to include wayfinding signage. So maybe this needs to jump to $500,000, and maybe that's got to be some from the town and village, the rest from New York Forward. So I think you'll probably see the budget getting adjusted at some point, I would think. But, because we don't have, and I think key to this is going to be having a strong committee. So we're going to need to find people in the community, and maybe even working with the county, maybe Amanda Dana from County Tourism, some other folks, we'll get them on a committee. And then also key is developing a really strong RFP, because we don't, if we don't ask the right questions and hire the right firm, this isn't going to work out. So we've got a, strong RFP, hire the right firms, get them in place. And then we've got to make sure that we do a good job. We also have to involve the public, because, even though this is going to be geared towards attracting visitors here and keeping them here, we also want the community to feel like vested in what we're promoting, the community as. And so that's going to be key too. So I think that's pretty much everything.
All right,
Questions?
Budget. So we did say, we believe a lot of us are in consensus that it's not high enough. But what's our plans for ongoing supplying of the budget and?
Sure. So I think with the hotel, or possibly more hotels, so I think that, the hotel tax isn't just going to grow itself. So we need to make sure that I think we should take a percentage of the hotel tax every year and put it towards this. And I think that would be a fair way to keep it growing. Whatever that percentage is, we're going to have to, again, I'm not an expert on what the amount of, advertising spend you have to do, and whether or not we have a position versus hiring a firm to run this. Again, I think that gets worked out during the process, but I think ultimately it gets, comes from the hotel tax. So if this hotel gets built, that's going to generate a sizable amount. I could see other hotels going up in the town, other accommodations. The county is chipping in a little bit every year. It's not a lot, but it's something. And, maybe the town and village are chipping in funds for marketing and advertising. And then we're just going to have to decide, is it a position or is it a firm that we're hiring? And I don't know the answer to that yet, but I think we have time to figure it out because by the time if this gets awarded, this is in what, the spring? And then, I think Peekskill just got their RFPs back and they're just hiring people, right? And that was what, how many years ago now?
2.
Yeah.
2.
So, I mean, we've got some time, to figure this out. And I think we're going to learn from Peekskill and Haverstraw as to how that went. So we can certainly talk to them as we're doing this. Yes.
Your talk now sort of shifted more to the branding than the physical components.
Oh, sure.
Could you just flesh that out a little bit?
Yeah, of course. So, as part of this, part of the branding is also going to be creating I guess like what the signs look like, what the historical signs look like, different wayfinding signs, those different pieces that are going to be throughout the town and the village. And so I believe as part of this, we're going to also try to identify, before we get done with this, actually try to pinpoint the spots where the signs are going to go on the actual, plan. And, a number of you have said, well, what if you want to, add more signs later? Well, I think if we have the templates, the village and the town will be able to replace or add signs as it needs to going along. But we definitely want to get as much into this as possible. I don't know what that number is right now, but I'm sure it's going to be in the, dozens, if not, 100 of, signs. As far as some of like the actual, print, I think what we're looking to do is also create I guess what I would call like an inventory of different, digital pieces that we can use to advertise. Maybe we're going to want to get if it's allowed, can we get photos and create videos? And I think there's one-time costs that we're allowed to incur. So whatever the extent is, I think we're going to want to make sure that we get a lot of photos and, produce a video. And maybe there's a welcome to Cornwall book. I know that you guys are doing a, $50-60 million capital project over at Storm King Arts Center. And so I know that, we're going to want to have.
Is that much money?
Sorry, I'm off by 10 or so, but so when visitors come to Storm King Arts Center, there's going to be a chance for the town to have, created something that maybe gets handed out at the visitor center, so that this way, when, what are you estimating? What is it, 300,000 visitors are going to be coming there in the next certain number of, so, we would like, every one of those 300,000 visitors to get a Welcome to Cornwall brochure. So we're going to want to make sure that we create something really special that can go in that, visitor center. So stuff like that, we're going to want to create. I'm sure there's going to be other pieces that we'll identify based on the marketing research we're going to do. Yeah.
I guess I'm curious about how we're phrasing this, because we're talking about a lot of things.
Sure.
There's signage, there's websites, there's social media, there's print pieces. Is this a joint effort, town and village?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So obviously, with the signs, we're going to have to, if you're in the village and there's going to be a logo on it, it'll be obviously the village logo. If you're in the town, but it'll still be the same,
Same sign,
yeah,
it's just gonna have the
same
different,
sign. It'll just,
it'll have different
It'll
logos.
have different logos, and the town is gonna, town will probably have to update its logo. I know.
Need to.
I know. It's too,
That's a
it's too-
quality logo
it's
right
too
there.
busy.
Come
Our
on.
logo's
That
too
is a
busy.
quality seal.
But yeah, joint effort, and some of this stuff, like the joint projects, and we haven't gotten there yet. We've got to figure out which municipality is actually going to own it, because that'll determine where the grant funds go and who gets reimbursed.
But we are working in concert on it.
We have time for one more question.
All right. Josh, don't go anywhere because you're going to do the small project
okay.
fund. So stay right where you are, pal. Because you're going to sell the dollar in a dream. Actually, $300,000 in a dream.
Well, after the small project fund, then we have, then it's gonna be the village's turn.
That's the
Yeah,
village's
well,
turn.
no,
We'll have
it'll be
Doc Hilbert
Kristen's
and
turn,
Dr.
but I'll
Cooper.
be there with her.
Really got off the hook on this
All right.
one.
So,
Oh, I did. I talk enough. Trust me.
so we kind of went back and forth on this. I mean,
Wait, did we
basically,
vote? Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
LPC,
sorry.
if you can do your
Vote?
evaluation.
No?
Yeah, give me
Okay.
1 second.
let you vote.
You need to vote?
I can go back. It'll. So basically, initially we went back and forth on this, and this was sort of, I would say, not a last minute submission, but I think we realized that beyond the really big projects, there's also a lot of other businesses in our, in our business district that would want to benefit, and they're not going to have $500,000 projects. They're not going to have even $100,000 projects, but you know, they may have a 10 or 15 or 20 or 30 or whatever $40,000 project to do facade, to buy a piece of equipment that allows them to expand into a different, you know, business opportunity, to, you know, and so we wanted to basically put this in place. There are going to be, it's going to require a match, 25% match, because we think people should have skin in the game for this sort of thing. So let's just give an example of what a project could be. So you've got and I believe this applies to what, mixed use properties too. So it could be ground floor retail and then apartment up top. So that's actually, you know, quite a lot of our buildings in our downtowns. So if you wanted to, let's say you bought a building and you had a successful coffee shop, but you needed a piece of equipment that cost $15,000 or $20,000, that was going to allow you to, you know, to sell, you know, espresso, or to you know, I don't know, you know, make something different. You could come to this fund and you could, you know, put in a proposal and it would be reviewed. We're going to have to set up basically a review committee, and we're going to have someone that's going to administer that.
An administrator.
So we're going to have to figure that out. That will probably be like a third party partner. It could be like a nonprofit, also working in partnership with like a financial institution as well. So these are all the pieces we're going to have to put into place, but this allows the mayor and I, or whoever is here, because this, although this could probably get stood up pretty quickly, I would think. This may be one of the first things that gets stood up. So this could actually start happening next year if we work quickly. No, not. This is like 2025.
Optimistically,
Okay.
end of next year.
I mean, I like to move fast, so, you know, as the.
And the
you
state
know.
likes to move slow, so we'll.
No, I know. We'll meet in the middle. So January of 2025.
Okay.
So, yeah, so look, I think this is the best way to get help to, you know, to a certain number of businesses in both the town and the village. One of the things I'm actually going to need help though from the chamber and the LPC is getting feedback from businesses on what they would want, you know, whether or not they want this and what types of projects they would like to spend this on, I believe is what you would ask for. So that's something that we're going to need help with. So I think we got Scott here, we got Steve, some others. If we could get that, you know, feedback, maybe we could talk at a meeting about that, see what they say, what they would want to spend the money on. But generally, it's going to have to be for capital improvements, you know, that would allow for facade, interior, or business expansion, up to $50,000 with a 25% match.
And practically speaking, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we determined that probably 10% of that would be used for the village and the town to go in together. Susan's nodding, that makes me feel good. To go in together to hire an administrator. So we're really looking at the disbursement of about $270,000. We would have to, we've already talked about trying to use the village treasurer, town treasurer. It can't be done that way. There has to be a standalone, separate administrator, probably gonna be about 30 grand for that to see it through the process. So we're looking at about $27,000 worth of disbursement money.
Yeah. And the thing I'd say is it is a state requirement that there's a third-party administrator. That is not something that the town or village have the choice to make.
Yeah.
Can it just be like a legal entity, like with an escrow account?
Not necessarily. I mean, there is.
Has to be a full-time position?
It's not a full-time position. It's going to be somebody that's consulting out, but there is several steps for each of these properties. They do have to go through environmental review and various sets of like state approvals. So it is very nice to have somebody who can manage all of that on behalf of the municipalities.
Yes.
One quick question and one slightly longer one. Quick is, the expectation is to hand out the money within a year?
To get the program off the
No,
ground,
no.
accepting applications. in a year.
Once you,
Oh.
how long does this $300,000 last?
5-year contract.
Yeah, so I think that's,
Okay.
is that in there? Yeah, it's 5 years.
All right, and then my longer question
Yes.
is, I assume that other communities have had this? And that's where
Yes.
you've gotten the idea somewhat? Can you talk a little bit about those other experiences, what you've learned from them?
So my understanding is that this is a good program, that it does, now it's mostly been DRIs because,
Yes.
and they get a larger amount. They get, what is it, up to 500?
600,000.
Yeah, sorry, up to 600,000. So this is the first time that we've got smaller entities applying for this. But look, overall, it's similar to some of the other, you know, there are some other, HCR.
HCR has a Main Street grant.
Yeah, they
This
have a
is
Main Street
modeled
grant
after that.
program, so it's similar to that, and where it has been successful, but you do need businesses that can get through the process and it's really key to have somebody that can help guide them.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the
If
key.
you don't mind me adding, so
Yeah.
Amy, one of the things actually about the required administrator, that's a new requirement this year, because we found in DRI communities that it is a lot of work for a staff to take on. And so now you have this person who's handling it on behalf of the village, but also can be that point of contact with the property owner to help them understand the process as well. So that's one thing that we've learned in our previous 5 years, that this is the way to go, because it can be a challenge. I think the other thing, and I think the supervisor alluded to this, is demand is really important. And so that's why he's asked the LPC to help identify what demand is. We have had communities where it can take a long time to spend that. But one of the things that we've started this year is like, start early to figure out, is there actually a need for this in the community? And so that's one of the things that we're doing in the planning phase this time.
And I think the two biggest selling points on this, one is it's really discretionary funds because it allows us to look and determine smaller projects that might not have made it into the cachet of the tranche of 10 that we have, but they're smaller projects and it allows us that discretionary funding. So
Scott, you had a question?
I have two questions. So are there, it sounds like there are state guidelines for obtaining the funds that the entity that's requesting the funds will have to go through. It's not like it's a state.
Yeah,
requirement.
HCR would handle the contract, and they have a whole set of guidelines that that the town and the village would have to go by.
Okay. And my second question is, does it have to be a business, or could nonprofits also be applying for money from the small fund?
that's a good question.
Nonprofits have been typically allowed. I know municipal facilities like government buildings are not eligible, but again, that's something that would be determined. Like, what happens if this is awarded as an administrative plan is established between HCR and the village and the town, and that would outline some of the more specific rules.
But it still has to remain within the corridor, correct?
Correct. It still has to remain in that New York 40
So it
area.
won't help us with like the Hudson Island Nature Museum. They're outside the corridor.
I don't know who to address this question to, but we have a lot of knowledge, but I'll ask you.
Sure.
This project, how can it ensure that the projects that are being funded actually meet our economic development?
That's a good question, Mr. Supervisor. I'm
You
interested
know
in
what?
hearing your answer.
So what I would say is that if, my understanding with this is, look, there's certain things that we can't touch that the state's like mandating has to be in place. I don't know if one of them is we can make, so this is really a question for you. I mean, what's the extent that that the town and village can, put in certain requirements? Like if we wanted to meet, for instance, like the new REDC's, goals that they're working on, if we wanted to have those in there, or if the town is do we want it to be, to be aligned with, the mission of the strategic investment plan, right?
So you referenced the fact that there will likely be a committee set up to kind of review and select applications. You all also make that application. So you can kind of decide, like, here's our priorities and, does this project meet them? So, I mean, there's still, like, while the state has rules, there's still a lot of discretion left to the village and the town as to kind of what projects are prioritized.
Any other questions?
All right, great. LPC, if you can do your evaluation.
It's a baptism by fire. I think he held up pretty good.
I think so.
Questions about this arrangement. I want to go.
I'm just a pretty face.
And next up, we have Dock Hill Road.
All right, Dock Hill Road. Kristen, let's go. All right, I know.
All right, you got
I know, I know,
your turn
I
there.
know,
Your turn
I
there.
know. Into the breach. All right. I'm the color guy, so you're the play-by-play. So what do you
Jason,
want
I
to
think you want to let Jason go.
Jason.
I can
assist.
Jason's gonna present.
I'm going to go.
I mean, it's his man.
He's got to do something.
Glad to assist, but I don't.
Okay. All right, so real quick, because we have a limited amount of time here, so I'm just going to do the open because our engineer, Jason Pitangaro, and our planner, who's joint for the town and the village, Kristen O'Donnell, will do all the particulars. The only piece of the entire corridor, which you can see right there, from the town, Shadane Circle, all the way down to the Donahue Farm property and the Donahue Memorial Park, which is the riverfront, that is not traversable on foot safely, is Dock Hill Road. So this is a big piece for us. It's a signature piece for us to make sure that we can make that walkable. There is a path that comes off of Dock Hill Road, but to try to connect that to the Donahue Farm property, knit everything together, which is the sole purpose of this whole project, make it traversable, make it walkable, make it synergistic, all the things. This is why this is important. So I won't get into the details. I'll let Jace and Kristen kind of talk you through what we're planning on doing down there. Chris, Jace, who's up first?
Sure.
All right.
So,
This right here too.
sure. As the mayor has just pointed out, the Dock Hill Road is a major connection point for the village. It actually connects three different entities: Hudson Street, it connects Donahue Memorial Park, and connects Donahue Farm. There are portions that are already constructed or rudimentary constructed, but the main portion along Dock Hill Road, there isn't any actual trail there. So to connect those three existing assets would be a huge plus for the community. I think if everybody, you can go back to the last slide, but everybody is familiar with the area here. The road is frequently traversed on foot. I think if you even looked at any Google image or Google Street View, you'll see people walking up and down there. It leads directly to Donahue Park. You know, the mayor pointed to the graphic a little earlier. The village is Cornwall on the Hudson, so the connection to the Hudson is extremely important. It also is going to connect to Donahue Farm, which has 4 existing trails there already. This connection was identified in the 2021 comprehensive plan as well. So it's a significant piece of the puzzle that will allow the connection throughout the entirety of the village. We can go on to the next slide again. So there is a portion of the trail that is already existing, but it's a rudimentary piece. There is some guide rail in place that's going to need to be removed and reset in place. And then the remainder of the area will be, a new trail will be created. There's about 900 feet of trail that's existing and about 17 or 1,600 feet of trail that will have to be created. And we're estimating the total project cost to be about $1.5 million or $1.1 million. There are a couple other funding applications that we have made to help subsidize this funding. In addition to the trail, there is going to be some restoration and stormwater enhancements that'll be done to stabilize the banks in that area on both sides of the road there. It's obviously subject to washout. There's also an existing historic bridge that already exists there. We have made initial and second inquiries to SHPO, and we're awaiting their second response so we can determine what's needed to preserve that. So if Kristen or the mayor wants to add anything else, we can.
Got about a minute left.
Okay. So real quick, why is that important? So again, the only part of the corridor, which if you look from Shenane Circle all the way down to the Donahue Memorial Park and Donahue Farm property, that does not have a sidewalk. It's difficult to put a sidewalk in. Somebody mentioned ADA compliant before. That will not work here. The pitch of the road is too steep. It's impossible to do that, but we can make it safer. And so the plan is to stretch it so that you traverse down Dock Hill Road, you cross over onto the already established path and back over. So that's the plan, to encourage people to do that, coming from the Donahue Farm property, from Bayview Avenue, safely across a crosswalk and then down that road. From my perspective, and I'm not allowed to shill for projects, this is the most important project for the village. I'm not shilling. I just said it's important. I just said it's important. I'm not shilling. But this, I appeal to your sensibilities. This is an important project for us because if I had a nickel for every time Mrs. McGillicuddy, who's 94 years old with 2 arthritic hips, who's been here 5 generations back to the Quakers, comes into my office, and Mrs. McGillicuddy comes in many forms and shapes and says, I almost got hit going down Dock Hill Road. Mothers pushing baby carriages, young couples walking with their
Parents
kids.
Pushing baby carriages.
What's that?
Parents pushing baby carriages.
What did I say? Oh, exactly. I did that back in the 90s. Yes. So anyway, what I'm saying is, this is desperately needed from our perspective, because once this is done, the entire New York Forward corridor is now traversable. It is not now, but if this project is funded, it will all be traversable. And with that, I will defer back to Jason. Kristen, anything to add?
Just that, again, it's 3 assets that are existing. They're all municipally owned assets that it's going to be able to connect those things. And it's a safety issue as well, so.
I know, good thing. Good thing I was calm on this one. All right, questions? Yes, ma'am.
The same question I asked Josh earlier. This is obviously a great thing for residents. Can you talk to the co-benefits?
You talking about for visitors and tourism?
The larger purpose of this funding.
Thank you. You want to handle this?
Well, I just want to say that, if you wanted to, say, use Donahue Park and there's availability of additional parking up at the farm and vice versa. I think if you were in the park and you wanted to get to Main Street or Hudson Street, it allows that walkability there. So I think, again, just the linkage of everything is what is the co-benefit just to all parties involved.
Riverfest, movies on the Hudson, the amount of weddings I do. I average about 10 weddings at the gazebo a year. I know people should have their head examined for asking me to officiate, but those are all things that draw people down to the waterfront. So yes, that is the co-part that you're talking about. It does encourage tourism, it does encourage visitors, and again, that road is just simply not safe to traverse, and we want to make it safe. We certainly don't want to put a regular sidewalk down Dock Hill Road. It wouldn't fit. Yes, sir, Mr. Warren.
So having walked down that road a lot, there's not a lot of room there. So we have room to do some sort of a pathway and not.
You're teeing me up for this, and we didn't speak beforehand. The actual walkway is going to traverse back and forth across the creek. So a big chunk of it is going to be on the other side of the guardrail. Part of it will be on the inside of the guardrail. And Ted, to your point, there's literally 2 feet when you're butted up against the guardrail there, which makes it unsafe where there's a gravel path. But we're going to cross back over, where Pagenstecker Park is, and it will wind its way down there. Now, will people still go, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stand here. Yeah, we're going to have to break that habit, and we're going to have to make sure that people understand that we want them to stay on that path. But this is going to be encouraging for that.
And follow-up question, material for this path?
Jason.
Right now it's proposed as like a stone dust path. It's a semi-pervious path. So it's not going to be concrete sidewalk or anything like that.
Anybody else? All right. I think we handled that pretty well.
Do we have a design of how it's going to cross?
Yes, we do. I mean, these are bits and pieces of the existing trail, and it's on the other side, Jim. You know where the creek that runs down Dock Hill Road, obviously on the right-hand side or the north side of Dock Hill Road. But do we have an actual drawing of the path, Jason?
We do. It's
I didn't
just
see these slides ahead of time, so otherwise I would have slapped the map in there, but, yes,
there is a plan that has
schematic.
been done. We've walked it. We've gone through the area there.
So we don't want to pour concrete. We don't want to do anything that's not going to fit with the natural aesthetics of that, because that is one of the truly most beautiful paths to walk in the village. We don't want to mess that up.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding and tracking the military terms, right? The goal isn't to widen Dock Hill Road in areas that are narrow. You're trying to avoid them altogether.
It is impossible to do so. I brought New York State in, we looked at that. That road cannot be widened. And if we did widen it, we'd have to take a piece of that creek, which is, we don't want to mess with the tributary. So we're going to use what we have there. We're going to improve upon it and make it work. So, yeah. Any other questions? Sir?
And this will go all the way up to Donahue Farm.
It will come from Donahue Farm down Bayview, and then it will connect to the original path from Hudson Street, where Hudson Street runs into Dock Hill Road. So yeah, the whole purpose, again, remember, we want to tie all these things in together. We want people to walk to Donahue, Farm. We want people to walk down to the river and then walk back into the village and back into the town. So yes, sir.
We do have the schematic. We can send that around after the meeting so that everybody can see it. Yeah.
Also, this is any plans to put the spring back in place.
Yeah, I know a lot of people that used to come there to get their water, but we used to have a natural spring there that people would come from far and wide to get their water from. They stopped it because when the water came off the mountain and ran through Donahue Farm back in the day, there were some issues with fertilizer and contaminants and things like that. But it literally, people would come with empty jugs, fill them up and go home and drink it. It was the
like
best water around.
ice cold water.
Yeah, it was the best water.
It was the best water.
So you're
All
Mrs.
the old timers
McGillicuddy?
know.
You're Mrs. McGillicuddy?
That's Mr. McGillicuddy. All right, what else? Anything else? All right, so I'm staying here because we're moving right on to Donahue Farm,
So let's
correct?
give, we're gonna give the LPC a minute to.
They've already voted. They put 10 out of 10 on that one. I know what the vote was already. The fix is in. The fix is in.
Numbers in this system.
All right. I'm not shilling. I'm just merely pointing out the importance of this project.
If I move the Imaginarium into the park, if I get
You get to chill. Oh, wait, you didn't for that.
I'll shill for that too. I told them I'm not voting because I like every one of the projects. I can't, they're like all my kids, all 10. I don't want to say, yes, this is better, but. All right, we're moving on. All right, so unfortunately, you got stuck with me because Dave Work and Dan Poindexter, who are two esteemed members. Dave is the chairperson of the Donahue Committee. The Donahue Committee is now the conjoined Donahue Farm Property Committee and Donahue Memorial Park or Riverfront Committee. They've conjoined Dan and Dave. Dan is the recording, Bill, is Dan the recording secretary? Is that his position? Secretary, and Dave is the chair. They are both unfortunately out tonight with an illness, so they can't be here. So I'm stuck here, but I do have Trustee Brain here, who's a member, as a trustee. He is the village board's liaison to the Donahue Committee. So what we're looking to do is to preserve the historic structures at Donahue Farm. Now, Donahue Farm property is about 49 acres. I'm sorry, ma'am. Why do you have to be? I knew not to bring the planner here. 47 acres of prime property that Doc Donahue, who owned it, who is the second longest tenured mayor in the village's history, who also ran a kennel and a horse stable and an ice house and a number of things on those 47 acres for many, many years. The village was able to buy it well below cost about 4 years ago under the Brendan Coyne administration. So we now own it. There are 4 facilities there. There's an easement that is enforced by Scenic Hudson. Scenic Hudson, I'd rather go to war against the IRS than go to war against Scenic Hudson because you are going to lose. So Scenic Hudson makes sure that we don't clear cut it, we don't put up a strip mall, a Burger King, a car wash, all the things, and they make sure we stay within the parameters of the Scenic Hudson easement there. So there's a trailhead there that goes up onto Storm King Mountain and trails that connect onto the Appalachian Trail, which we have to allow a pathway through. 4 buildings. One of the daughters of Doc Donahue still lives in one of the houses there the rest of her natural life, and hopefully she lives to be 150 years old. There's 3 other buildings. One is the barn building, which the village has plans to convert into a community space for weddings, things like that. There's also on the bottom left-hand portion right there, we call that the ice house at the far left end. That was literally an ice house. The walls there are like 3 feet thick. They had foam insulation on the inside of them, and that's actually where they sold ice from and kept ice there for the farm purposes. And then the shed area there. The barn, the village with the bond that we took out has already replaced the roof on that. You got to fix the roof first. Nothing else matters if you can't keep water and the swallows from Capistrano from returning, and we've done that. On the ice house and the shed, a couple of anonymous donors have come forward with $56,000. It is currently the roof is being replaced as we speak. They just did the tar paper there the other day, and they're going to start that process. So those two buildings are what we're focused on. There is a third building, which you can see on the map to the right, but we don't have a picture of it, which was known as the kennel. It was a one-story building which had runs in it for dogs, for big dogs that used to be kenneled there when Doc Donahue was a veterinarian and kenneled dogs there. The building is uninhabitable. There's a small amount of asbestos there. It's a sleeve in the chimney place. We have to get that mitigated. We're dealing with our engineers on that. We'll have that taken out by an appropriate company and contractor that can do that. And then the village is going to remove, as we discussed in our meeting yesterday online, the village is going to raise that building ourselves, leave that clear. We cannot build any buildings outside the envelope of those 4 building area there, really the footprints of those 4 buildings. And I don't think that the Donahue Committee has argued that we should be building any more buildings there. We're talking about putting a visitor center down there. We're talking about maybe moving the village museum down there, whole host of things. But what we're looking for in this grant request are a number of things. First and foremost, yes, ma'am, 1 minute. First and foremost, we just want to make sure that the buildings are restored to their original glory. We have volunteer work, DPW, certainly highway department work that's going to help with that. But we do need help in that. We have a community garden there. We're going to be next to the ice house. That will be in the long term. That will be a place for blacksmithing classes, glass blowing classes, the community youth garden, which Mr. Sturmer is a big part of.
I want to just stress, it seems how we had this conversation yesterday, that it's not like a long-term goal, but like this funding is very important, and the New York Forward funding directly contributes to the transformation of the ice house so that it is ready for programming.
You hear
ready
that?
For things like blacksmith, glass blowing, those type of trades, and ready to provide educational opportunities. It's important that I think that we stress that we learned yesterday, that funding is going to directly contribute to the transformation of that building so that this is ready to have that programming right off the bat.
Well said. So where are we at right now? We have a community garden. We've already sold all the plots or plats, whatever you want to call them. Next year, we'll probably look to double that space. It's out in the big open field there. This weekend, and this is going to be a shill, and I'm allowed to do it because it's for a public thing. We are going to have a fundraiser there between the hours of 3 p.m. and 9 p.m. We're going to have a band. We're going to have a movie there that night and conduct a fundraiser down there with food trucks and all kinds of good things. But again, to move this forward, to make this a community place, to your point, when you say the co's, to bring people in. When they come to hike our trails, they have to go through the Donahue Farm property. As much as we can make this a hood ornament too, it will bring people here, keep them here, and let them shop and do all those other kind of things. Yes, ma'am. Done. Sir.
2 questions. One, what's the yellow square on that map?
That's where the garden is. So Jimmy, here's Bayview right here, just to orient this. Yep. So this is east going toward the Hudson River. That is the community garden. And if you haven't been down there, LPC members and members of the public that live around here, go see it. It's pretty impressive. I mean, there's people that are growing vegetables and fruits, and there's people that are planting pollinators down there and flowers and things like that. So it's a really cool spot. That's what that is right there.
Is there room?
Oh, I'm sorry, brother.
I'm gonna assume it says parking area, or it says, trail access?
That says trail access, so that's, as the mayor referenced, it's the base to King Mountain Trail.
Yeah.
And parking there, yeah.
Is there room to expand a little more parking there?
Again,
with
anything
Hudson?
that we do down there, as Bill's nodding his head, everything has to be run through Scenic Hudson. They help out with the maintenance of that road a little bit, the maintenance of the trails, but anything would have to be run through them. I've never seen it so overloaded that you couldn't park hikers in there.
Well, you don't see that one too overloaded, but you see up on Mountain Road.
Yes.
by the Stone Pillars is
Yes.
always overloaded.
Yes.
And it's maybe outside of the map as I look there, but certainly the village could there that fits in with the wayfinding and signage efforts.
Good
up
point.
Mountain Road, directing people down Mountain Road and around the corner.
Yeah.
to Park there.
Yeah.
And if there's, as you said, a village museum there.
Yeah.
If there's other facilities there, that could really, really tie things together very nicely.
We did include a kiosk as part of this presentation, so there will be that kiosk that we envision having not only wayfinding signage, but information about other locations for parking, other things to do, cultural resources, other things to do in the town, any events, current events, things upcoming, all that.
And the problem with hikers, if I can say, they're creatures of habit, and the ones that park up on, you're talking about a mountain road where the stone pillars are, they take that same trail, and that's halfway up. If you want to start down at the bottom to go up on there. Yeah, I think signage, Josh, that would be a great place to put signage to tie it in with the wayfinding and all that. That'd be a good spot to put it, because that is such a dreary entrance right there. It really is. Scotty.
Facilities or anything on the property?
Yes, so the village on a DASNY grant, which stands for the Dormitory Authority of the State of New York, last year secured through Senator Skoufis's office, was able to put composting toilets down at the riverfront. And I am here to tell you, I took credit for it because that's what politicians do, even though I had nothing to do with it, but I was there for the ribbon cutting. That has been one of the most popular things that we have ever done. People have asked these two questions. Why don't you have toilets at Donahue Farm? That's where we want them. And why don't you have them at the bandstand? And again, the bandstand is, as you're coming into town, headed in from the village into the town, the only place, unless Village Hall is open, and we're only open from 8:30 to 4:30, Monday through Friday, not on the weekends, the only place to go to the bathroom is to stop in a restaurant and go, or if the library's open. So we want to put one at the bandstand in the municipal lot behind it on River Avenue, and we want to put one at the Donahue Farm property. We desperately need one there.
So as far as venues go, you mentioned glass blowing, blacksmithing, those types of things. Have people expressed interest already to you, or is this going to be a finding effort?
So when people stop in to talk to me when they're paying their water bill, which pays my salary, when they stop in to do that, the number one thing they say about the Donahue Farm property is the garden. And what are we doing down there with kids? And I direct them to the Cornwall Youth Garden Club. That's number one. And then the other thing that the teachers say to me all the time, especially from Cornwall and Hudson Elementary School, is would there be some type of hands-on classes similar to what the Hudson Highland Nature Museum does and what they do out on Muser Road, classes like that. And that's kind of where Kristen and I talked about blacksmithing, glass blowing, anything like that. But because we have that covered building, now that we've cleaned it out, because that was a huge and it was a Herculean task accomplished by the village as well as volunteers. Now that it's cleaned out, the sky's the limit. So we're getting the roof fixed. We want to get it painted up, secured. We're trying to repurpose all the lumber, make all the patches using the original wood there, and then turn that into our learning center.
Follow-up question.
Sure.
Is there any future plans for making this an event space, or is this strictly going to be hiking?
So as long as Bill's looking at me right now, as long as Scenic Hudson is not on this call, we have to be very careful because there are parameters about what we can use it for. Let's say that you want to have a rock and roll concert down there and you want to do it for your family. Scenic Hudson is going to know you can't do that. You have to show the public good. This weekend, yeah, 100%. That would be a great idea. We don't normally run into problems with Scenic Hudson as long as it's something that is community oriented. And I'm sorry? And that's a great point. So CPM and his crew have come to us and asked, because they've done this at Sugarloaf before, and since, what's it called? Savage Wonder Festival. Why not do it down there? For years and years and years, going back to, 40, 50 years ago, especially in the 40s and 50s, they did the fireworks down there. The problem with the Donahue Farm property is ingress and egress. It's one way in and one way out. That is the only thing right now that's preventing us from doing bigger things down there. We have to manage it that way. But yes, sky's the limit. As long as it's community oriented, Scenic Hudson's not going to have a problem. We just have to protect the space. And we have competing equities. I have some people that want us to clear cut everything and put 17 athletic fields. And I have some people that try to tell me that grass is a sentient being and we shouldn't be stepping on it. So I have to balance those two equities. I think we can find something in the middle, but for community things, yeah, that's a big part of the selling point for this. What else?
Good.
See, that's how you do it. See that? All right. Nothing else? All right. I'm going to go sit down. LPC, make sure you vote and vote your conscience. Yes, Bill.
No, public comment. I want to first online.
Wait, but first, we have a 15-minute public comment period. Oh yes, LPC, I want you to evaluate the last project. We're going to talk about the evaluations after the public comment period. We have about 15 minutes for public comment. We're going to allocate about 3 minutes per each member of the public who wishes to speak. So I see this gentleman had his hand up first, so go for it.
That is Trustee Bill Brain from the Village Board.
All right, you're all in danger now. I don't have to introduce myself because the mayor already did. I'm at 41 Clark Avenue. Like the other elected officials in the room, I don't have a dog in this fight. I think that if we do any of these projects or all of them, we would be in better shape than we are. So I love all of them, and I'm really pleased to see this process and thank all of you for all your hard work. To address the synergy question, I think I can do it in one piece. I'm a marketer by profession, and all of our product plans that we do for all of the products that we create have marketing integrated from the very beginning. So this, broadly speaking, these 10 projects might be considered sort of a business plan or a product plan for the village and town of Cornwall and Hudson. And so it's very important that you have a plan for marketing those things. So if you're going to do improvements to the Sands Ring homestead, it doesn't make sense to do those unless you have a way to make sure that there's demand for the use. Otherwise, you've put money into something that's just going to slowly degrade again over time. The connector trail, I just would ask that the applicants consider adding water sources and shade to it. The Storm King Theater, I just wonder, I was pleased to hear about, Mr. Ianoni's gone, but I was pleased to hear about the idea for electrifying the infrastructure in there, and I would just wonder about rooftop solar anywhere it's possible on any of these projects. Oh, and I guess I didn't actually hear the ask, the New York Forward ask for the boutique hotel. And I did have the question of whether my Hilton honors points would work
He
there.
said
But
it was million.
I don't see them.
1 million.
Million.
Oh, 1 minute left?
No, 1 million.
Oh, 1 million was the
1
ask.
million minutes.
All right. I didn't think I even had a minute left, but a million. Okay, got it. Thank you for that. And then just on Donahue Farm, thank you for that description. There is just in case anybody's not aware, there is a publicly available plan that the Donahue Committee has put together that the village board has ratified, prioritizing what the projects would be and what the potential future uses would be. Everything would, of course, be in line with the Scenic Hudson Conservation Easement and with the will of the community. And thanks again for all your help. This is great.
Thanks, Billy. All right, who's next? Sir, Mr. Roby.
Question for Jill. Do you have any comments about the email I sent you yesterday?
No, I do not. I had already sent you an email that I believe explained all of it.
But I responded to that because the library assigned where the kiosk would go.
Greg, the only thing I'm going to say on this is tonight, and we spoke at the village board meeting the other night, this has to stay within the parameters of the 10 projects. Your points are well taken, and I saw
Fine,
Jill
Jim,
answer.
Jim, I'm talking to Jill.
No.
I'm going to shut you up on this one. So to the committee.
Greg, no, you're not.
Yes, I am.
You can't, because tonight we're sticking to
You're
the
not
agenda,
listening
sir.
again.
I'm listening to you. I'm telling you, we're sticking to the agenda. If you speak
Did you see anything in my letter yesterday?
She just
that would
said
not
she
be
saw it, she
covered.
responded.
That would not be covered in either that $300,000 that Josh presented on, and or the art projects for the pass through, because the kiosk again would be in that corridor. Do you, based on your knowledge, is there anything that you think is a problem that the state would flag down the road? Because obviously I can work with the committee, I can work with
let her
Josh.
answer. Let her answer.
Yeah.
Correct. So as we, in my email, as I had said before, because you do not currently have any type of site control over the library space, your project is ineligible
The
because
director pointed the place out. You did not see my email. That's all I got to.
Okay.
You do have an email that you haven't had a chance to look at. That's all. If you can get back to me on that, that's great. In terms of the Scenic Hudson,
Yes, sir.
I have read those things. I worked at Camp Olmsted when that was going through. There was athletic fields allowed, but that was traded for that parking spot down in the field. It was initially up in the right around the barn. And James is right. You don't want to mess with Scenic Hudson. The only way you can get past that is eminent domain. Second one is the spring, is actually the stream. There's a gravel pit underneath that entire area. And so what people were drinking was the sewer runoff from the people on Mountain Road.
You're right.
Just for the record.
You're right.
We all thought it tasted great. But with the campers, I used to do the disappearing stream. We'd walk up through that field and go until we could find water. And then where to go? And so then we'd hike them down around to Passaneck Park, and this is it, because it was still running at that point.
Right by Pagenstecker, you're right.
Yeah, so, and the other thing that you mentioned, and you should emphasize, Hudson to Delaware Trail. I'm a former supervisor of the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference for Storm King, now State Park. That's been a project that I was working on 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So in terms of how it leverages, this is something that the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference will be promoting, because you now finally have the connection all the way from the water gap to the Hudson.
Let's us have a sidebar on that. Your points are well taken about the library, but we don't have an answer on that. To Jill's point, because they are not clearing it and saying you have authorization to do a project on their property, and a handshake deal does not work. Just let me finish. All I'm saying is, let's make that a sidebar, okay? We can talk about, there are plenty of other grants out there, and there's something we can do on that.
Do either you or Josh have anything as our municipal administrators that flags the idea of one of the art projects being, having as part of it, the kiosk at the library?
I think it's a great idea.
Okay, Josh?
But
We're gonna have so there's gonna be up to 6 art projects, and there's gonna be a committee that's gonna look at proposals, and just, so we're still, look, he could submit his project as part of.
The school district is going to be hopefully involved with this, and the library. There's no reason it can't go forward anyway. But to me, again, trying to promote things, because I'm also working with BlackRock, the Storm King Art Center, and the museum, and all of those leverage the things and getting more people in and more exposure. So those of you on the committee, there is a concept video our mayor and our supervisor have, as well as the New York State.
Your concept is a good one. Let's me, you, and Josh talk about that offline. All right, thank you, sir. Who else? Yes, sir.
I guess I have more of a question looking at the first proposal where, sorry, my name is Oscar Rivas from Cornwall.
First proposal was the connector trail? No, it was rings.
Riverlight Park.
Okay, I guess not that one. The one where they have the trees along the sidewalks.
That's the connector trail.
Okay, yeah. I guess my question is, I would love to have that happen and see the trees all along Main Street. My question, how does that interfere with the power lines that we have all along the street? You know, if we start planting trees and the branches are gonna fall and they're gonna fall on the power lines, like.
So the plan is, the way we're trying to do smart planning now. So, the power lines run on one side of the street and they switch. In the village, it's like 2 blocks is on one side, the other 2 blocks are on the other side. Is planning them so that they're not under power lines, unless it's a particular species that is not going to grow big enough where Central Hudson comes in with their hacksaws and chops everything down.
Yeah,
so that's the plan.
That was my
we would do it
concern,
smart.
Yeah.
Good, great question. Great question. Who else?
Any other public comments? And do we have anybody online?
Not that.
Okay.
We have 6 people online.
Okay.
How many?
6.
We got 6. All right.
Okay.
All right.
I'd go again with one question that was texted.
Yeah.
Can he have another one?
Yeah, that's
Bill,
fine.
you get 2 questions tonight.
This was in from an anonymous watcher, but just to, for the purposes of the New York Forward grant, in essaying project viability, just a question about it, I sort of glancingly alluded to it, but the question of whether Hilton is actually on board potentially for the boutique hotel, that would obviously, in my view, be something to consider for New York Forward grant making.
If they're on board with what he's doing, my understanding is that he's already gotten the approvals for that, correct?
Oh, as far as what?
As far as
Hilton?
partnering with Hilton so that it is a Hilton boutique hotel, correct?
Yeah, that is my understanding, is that he's got that. But I guess the question is, obviously, I guess the LPC could require him providing whatever they want to see to be comfortable with the project, I would imagine, correct?
Yeah.
Look, whether or not he has that or not, the town board, or not the town board, but the planning board, this is going to most likely be an approved project by January.
Sure.
And look, they're also going for CFA funding as well. They've applied multiple times. they're gonna, they're likely to get public money.
No, I love to see the hotel there. It's great. I just think that for revenue projections and things like that, the greater the likelihood that there's Hilton involved, it seems more likely to me as a fairly lay person that it would be more of a viable project.
Good point.
Sure.
Anybody else? All right, Madam Chair.
Question, can I get a second?
Yeah, absolutely.
In terms of the branding plan that has been put forward for the town and the village, once the strategic plan has been approved, let's say that that's included in that, when in the process would that take place? If the state were to approve it, for example, like let's say that it gets included in the strategic plan, it goes to the governor. When could that be put forward?
My optimistic guess is the awarded projects would be announced spring of next year. And then contracts could typically, in my optimistic world, be by the end of next year. Contracts would be in place.
Okay.
And then, but what I will say is that typically the state allows for work to occur after the award date. We can backdate contracts, but that is at the project sponsor's own risk. Like, you never necessarily want to do work without a contract, but it is allowed.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm asking this as a village resident. Just a quick question, because the theater, I know when we have the bandstand, I can't.
You're talking about the Storm King Theater.
Yeah, because they were talking about 100 people, which
Mhm.
cool. But I know even when the bandstand is happening, I can't find a place to park in front of or anywhere near my apartment. Are y'all, is there gonna be parking?
Great
lot put
question.
in somewhere?
So my theory, I think, is the same as the supervisors. Having a parking problem is a good thing because that means we're bringing people into our town. There have been discussions, and I don't want to get out over my skis on this, but where the Cornwall Central School District Administrative Building is, they doubled their space for their parking. The administrators are only there between the hours of 8:30 and 3:30 every day. So that would be a potential option. People have talked as you come down River Avenue, and the deputy mayor can probably speak to this because he was on the board back then. There's a stretch of land there that they had talked about, which is adjacent to the ball fields at Cornwall and Hudson Elementary School, about adding parking there. I don't know if that's workable for getting in and out. What we have in the municipal parking lot, I mean, other than during school hours, I mean, even during our high traffic time, where people are going out on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, I've never had a problem finding parking. So if this happens with the Black Box Theater, yes, one of the things that we're talking about is that, plus where the jewelry store, where GHS Jewelers is, and where Motivate Physical Therapy is, there's a parking lot right now. Right now, they keep it just for tenants. There's 15 spots in there. I'm sure if we get to that problem, it'll be a good problem to have. Maybe the owner of that parking lot decides to work out a deal with the village for some parking spaces there. So those are things we are thinking about, Star. Great point.
Okay, thanks.
Sir?
I've used up my questions and comments. I won't plague anybody with them anymore, but is there a way to submit any additional, because I'm thinking of things I wrote down and stuff, and
Oh, any additional New York Forward projects?
no questions and
okay.
comments date up for this meeting specifically, or is
Oh, no, well, we do have a public meeting on October 12th, so I encourage everybody to.
Which
to
is going to
come.
be at Munger Cottage in the town.
At 5:30 p.m. You can also, if you go onto the website, which is, I should know.
CornwallNYF.com.
Thank you. There is I believe there's a place where you can submit comments. You can feel free to submit comments through there, and that will come to us.
The website was posted on very informal the other day through,
Oh, good.
post that the committee members are putting up. So the information, you can go on there and click it.
Great,
thank you.
Just to address, I guess, because really all these projects, the private ones, they're going to create additional parking demand. I mean, they just are, and we hope that they'll bring people into the downtown areas. But like with the Main Street, we did a Main Street parking study, and we don't have a parking problem. And basically, we have a parking use problem, and you got to change people's behaviors. And they're not necessarily going to be able to park right in front of where they're going, but if you look at what people do now, if they can't find a spot, maybe they drive down the road, they go, on like one of the streets behind Main Street. I know down in the village, they probably, park further down, they park in the neighborhood. Now, maybe the neighborhoods don't necessarily like that, but that's already what's happening. I mean, that's what people are doing. They find a way to park and to get where they have to go. you know, and yeah, I just think, you know, again, you know, creating more parking, that's one of like the least economically, you know, best uses of a, you know, piece of property. It doesn't generate income. And so I think we actually want to, we want to limit the amount of parking we're creating, only what's necessary. I mean, that's just
Agreed.
All right, we need to keep moving. Thank you again to the public for providing comments. And we hope to see all of you on the October 12th. So we're going to move forward with the project evaluation criteria. This is for the LPC. And we're going to go over the results from the evaluations that you did.
Yeah, so just a reminder, the LPC evaluated these projects on project readiness, catalytic effect, and co-benefits. So we are either hot off the presses, so we're going to run through this live. So we are going to start with the project at Riverlight Park. As we can see here, it did not get ranked anything less than medium.
Can you zoom in on that?
Yeah.
Way of making that-
Better?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool. The LBC got to evaluate these projects on a scale from, you can see none, low, medium, high, very high, or if the question is not applicable. So to start here, the Riverlight Park project did not get any votes below medium for project readiness. Most of the votes came in for high or very high. Catalytic effect was more of a spread across on this one. It did get some low votes. Again, mostly high and very high. Co-benefits, medium, high, and very high. 75% were high or very high. Okay, can we move to
Yep.
connector trail?
Yep.
So moving on to the
I don't
connector
think so.
trail.
It just ranges.
This got more substantial votes in the medium category for project readiness. So high and very high. Catalytic effect, again, a lot of votes for high and very high for medium. Co-benefits, all high or very high. Moving on to the Lemon Building. Got some votes for low, and no very high votes, medium and high. For catalytic effect, those votes came for high and very high again, some for medium. Co-benefits, similar results, high, very high.
Sorry, do you mind just backing up? I just missed that. That's all right. Thank you.
On to the Storm King Theater. 75% voted high or very high for project readiness. Catalytic effect. Substantial amount of votes for medium, but also high. Co-benefits, again, more of a spread here, ranging from medium to very high, with medium and high taking up the majority of the votes.
Maya, what's that thermostat on right now?
Yeah.
Please tell me what it's on.
78.
78.
Onto the boutique hotel.
65, but it's at 78. I keep it on 60. It's these.
All right, guys, we're gonna keep going over here. So while the mayor works on the heat.
Thank you again, but most of them for high and very high for project readiness for the hotel. Catalytic effect, again, vast majority came in for high and very high with some for medium.
Sorry, can you scroll back up to readiness on that, just real briefly? Perfect, thank you. Thank you.
Co-benefits, majority of votes again for high and very high, some medium, similar results.
The hotel.
No.
Oh, sorry.
For the.
It was on heat.
No. It was on heat?
It was
Theater.
on heat.
Cold in the morning.
I know it was a little cold the other day.
Heat in the morning.
All the project
Well,
readiness.
the
votes
auditors
came
were in here
for
this
high and
morning.
very
I'll have a
high.
word with them tomorrow.
Well,
All
you
right,
did it
for-
at 5 a.m. So I mean,
Guys, we're on vet rep theater here.
All right, all right.
The catalytic effect for vet rep, again, high and very high, some for medium. Co-benefits, all votes were for high or very high. Moving on to the branding, marketing, and wayfinding. Spread fairly evenly across medium, high, and very high. Catalytic effect. Most of those came for high and very high as well, with some for medium. Co-benefits, similar results, mostly for high and very high, medium. Moving on to the small project fund for local, to assist local businesses. Project readiness was mostly voted for high and very high, with some results for not applicable. Catalytic effect, again, 75% voted for high or very high. Co-benefits, again, all votes were for high and very high. On to Dock Hill Road, all votes came in for high or very high project readiness. The greater spread for catalytic effect spread from low all the way up to very high. Co-benefits mixed between high, medium, very high. Almost there. To preserve the historic structures at Donahue Farm, all votes came in for high or very high for project readiness. Spread across medium, high, and very high catalytic effect. And again, spread across medium, high, and very high for co-benefits. So those are all of our results.
Well done.
Thank you. Can we revert back to the PowerPoint? Unless anybody wants to go back and see any more of these. Okay, so we're gonna go back to the PowerPoint, and we can show you the preliminary, the slate of projects as it is now, and what the New York Forward request is, because I think that's important to see. Right now, we're about, I misspoke earlier. I think somebody had asked a question about what the total was, and I
Yeah,
said
I
8
did,
million.
yeah.
It's actually 7 million. I think you were right at the beginning. So it's close to 7 million. So if you go down a couple slides, you'll see it. So we are, our New York Forward request for the 10 projects, we are at 6.87 million. The state likes to do, as you all know, between $6 and $8 million. So we're right in the thick of it. We heard today that the Imaginarium project is their New York Forward request is gonna go down a little bit. But we also expect, as we also heard, that we expect the, which one, the branding
and
marketing. Yeah, branding, marketing, wayfinding is likely gonna go up. We might also found, we have not yet done we're going to have, from the consultant team, we're going to have have like a fine look from an estimator to look at the look at some of the projects and what the costs are and what the budgets are. And so some of those numbers will be refined. So this is not the final number. I expect at the end it will go up a little bit. It usually does. That's very normal. But so far we have $6.8 million worth of New York Forward request and total cost of just under $20 million. So for $20 million of investment for $7 million grant. So we have another 15 minutes for the LPC to discuss. This is the preliminary slate of projects, but this is your chance. There will be more discussion at the next meeting as well. The next meeting, LPC meeting, you'll be voting on the final slate of projects. So it's not an individual project by project, you vote on the final slate. So I think I'd love to hear questions and comments from the LPC about how you feel about this slate of projects. Are there projects that at this point, you are welcome to remove any projects, although again, we don't want to get below that $6 million, so I wouldn't go removing projects left and right. You can also make modifications or, request modifications to projects. If there's something, like, well, that's really high, or I don't know, that seems like really low, you can, you have the ability to adjust some of these projects.
If you look at the total
Jill,
overall project budgets.
And this might be more of a Susan question, but like,
They're about $20 million
what has
worth of
confused
investment,
me is
but
how
there's $6 million
far
of that
our
overall budget coming
review
from the
goes.
state.
So, like, for the state to invest money in a private enterprise, particularly a for-profit private enterprise, like, I asked this question
So, like, the hotels,
before,
that's
but I
what
don't
they're
think I got
doing
an
with the
answer, is
projects.
like, what does the private entity have to guarantee back to the state in terms of the longevity of the project, the feasibility of the project? I have a second question, but I'll pause there.
Sure. So for private for-profit entities, I mean, if they were to be awarded and sign a contract with ESD would be requesting, financial records, or if there's not financial records, they would be looking for other things to verify that it is a sustainable business going forward. ESD and HCR, because this would apply to the small project fund as well, do have, HCRs is optional, but I would recommend the village and town do it. Clawback agreements in some ways. So if a business or something does stop operating, or they sell it and that is not agreeable to the contract, there could be clawback provisions proportionally. And I believe that period is about 5 years.
If I could go on without monopolizing. So, well, one just point of information.
Some
So
of them will
if,
get less,
if a grant doesn't get given out, ultimately, does Cornwall get the money back? Or does that just go into the great ether of some other project?
It goes, so one of the reasons we ask for the 6 to 8 million is in case Mrs. McGillicuddy comes up with $2 million and she says, you know what, I want to do Donahue Farm by myself. Then that money would then go to the next project on the list. So that's why we go above the $4.5 million ask, because sometimes projects do occur without needing state funding. So it does not go back to Cornwall, it goes back to the state for that slate of projects.
And then my other question is, like, we were shown very few visuals for these projects. And many of these projects are saying they're much further along. And, some of the visuals we saw is like, do you really want that on Main Street? Does that actually represent the values of the connector that you're building and the trees and the things like that? Like, how far does our review consider that element of it?
Well, that's subjective. I mean,
Everything we're doing is subjective.
of course, but how you envision Main Street may be similar to the way I do and different from the way Josh does. That's what,
Values at the beginning of this project. And I feel that some of the projects we've looked at may not actually represent a set of values that really reinforce street life, talk about greenery, create sustainability.
how so?
Yeah, which
Help me understand.
I don't know that I want to get, like, maybe next week I'll get
No,
there.
I feel I feel like I understand where you're going. I don't think that we don't have a lot of project visuals. We will have some more at the next LPC meeting. We will have, so the public projects so far do not have many visuals, but we will have renderings. They will not be exact renderings. They will be a representation of what it could be, because many of those projects, so Riverlight Park, certainly, the connector trail, you're gonna have to go through a design phase. And so, but the LPC, you will not have the opportunity to go through that design phase because it's gonna come at a later date. Obviously, as part of the public, you can go through the public process. That being said, if there are elements that you heard, I know you didn't really get to see them, but if there's elements of these projects that you heard that you were like, I don't know, that really sounds like a bad idea. I don't think that's something we should be including, or if it's a great idea, but what if we did this as well? That you can weigh in on. Is that helpful? Thanks. Okay.
So I'm a little confused.
Yeah.
My understanding of our role is to make sure that these projects align with New York State's and the regional economic development goals.
Sure.
And our job isn't to eliminate or prioritize the projects, but just to make sure that they qualify.
You can eliminate a project. So if you feel like it's not meeting the goals, or if it's not meeting the other objectives of the New York Forward program and the objectives the criteria that you guys have come up with, then you can certainly eliminate a project.
And I would add, you also want to make sure that the projects align with Cornwall's goals. Like you all set out a vision and goals as well. Like that's an important component to consider.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I just, if I'm remembering correctly from last, so we don't rank these
No.
1 to 10. We just say, we think this is the eligible slate, and it goes into New York State's black box, and they come out and say, here are the winners.
Instead of eligible, I'd say we think this is the best slate of projects that is going to lead to the revitalization of Cornwall.
Right.
Now, Susan, let's say that New York State sees it the way maybe we do. We say all 10 projects are good, and we're talking about $7 million, and we have $4.5 million. Will New York State come back and say to us, we'll approve this 80% of what you're asking here, 30% of what you're asking here, 50% of what you're asking here?
Typically, that is not done. Typically, what New York State has done is funded the full amount of the request, and then maybe at the after funding those requests, we have $200,000 left. The project we're looking for is $1 million. We offer the $200,000. And so that's just, so one project never gets that full amount usually.
Got it.
So, I'm sorry. So we have a slate of projects that we liked, that we saw, that we, that we ranked and scored pretty well. But we have a limited amount of money, and we're not supposed to rank them, right? So we can't do that.
Correct.
But we can't make the decision or collectively decide that almost all of them are, let me just use the example that all of them are good. Let's just say that.
Yep.
And we can't go back to the applicant and say, because each of those applicants can leverage, that's what I love about this process. So if your project was to get a portion of it, you can say this was embraced through the DRI program, the
New York Forward.
New York Forward program, and therefore maybe you would apply for others, other types of grants or anything like that. Can we go back then to the applicant to try to get within that 4.5 or $5 million or $6 million place, and possibly get it to where there's enough that goes around, and because then they can leverage.
Are you saying, can you go back to the project sponsors like today and say, we'd like to put in more money or something similar to that?
No, if we embraced all the, yes, thank you for,
Right.
Tell her.
So,
because I've been a part of the CFA process so much,
So many
right?
of them haven't
And we-
even applied for the CFA. So if I'm looking
Right.
at, Chris could ask for $1 million
Yeah.
for Imaginarium. You could ask for $1 million for,
Yeah,
for
for
vet rep.
So
the
many of
theater
these
could
I
ask for $1
see as
million. They haven't even
applications
done
for
that. So, like, amend your
CFAs.
budgets and.
So I think I
No?
see where you're going
Yeah.
with this. And this is, so whenever I play cards with my husband, he always puts in what's considered our house rule is that somebody has to get screwed on every turn, right? Nobody wins 100%. And unfortunately, this is kind of similar. So if we submitted a slate of projects worth 4.5 million to the state, they would say, no, that's too little. Is that where you're going with it? Or are you saying everybody reduce their budgets so that everybody will get something?
Let's say
So we get under that 6, because you're saying 4.5 is too low,
Right.
but 6 is a good number.
6 to 8 is
6
what we're
6
looking
to
for.
8.
Yeah.
So we're at 6.8 now.
Yeah. So we're in a good spot.
So we're good.
So we're good, but
The state could come back and cut somebody out.
The state will
No.
likely come back and cut
Yeah.
somebody out because we
Has
can't
to.
fund them all. Yeah.
I think, Maureen, what you're saying, what Maureen is saying is, look, if we went to everybody and everybody came in, and all those projects, we got everybody to come in under the 4.5.
Right.
So that New York Forward gave everybody a little bit of money, then it would allow that rep to leverage that and go to the CFA and say, hey.
This
we
was
did great
embraced.
application.
Yeah.
So if they amended their
yeah.
budgets to instead of asking for
That's
whatever
what I'm saying,
a
right?
million,
Yeah, exactly.
they would
Thank
ask for
you.
500,000 and then
that-
put in
But I think
500,000
what they're
from the
saying
CFA.
is-
Yeah,
I think
or like Restore New York, or
Yeah, I
you
think
know,
what-
whatever,
Yeah.
like the
I think
hotel's
the
going to
point-
apply for.
is that we can't do that. But
Yes.
going back to your point, Maureen, but I do still think that all of those projects, right, because they've been embraced by New York Forward, can still leverage that with CFA. You know what I'm saying? So even though they didn't get the funding from New York Forward, they can still say.
They got our
that
nod.
We were the top 10, or we were considered for the New York Forward project.
Right.
We didn't get awarded any funds, but we were in the slate of 10 projects.
I like
that. Gives them viability.
Leverage.
It
for the
does,
CFA.
and I can say, having been through this before, that projects that don't get funded, so after the process and after the funding awards come out, then, unfortunately, we will have to notify somebody that the project didn't make it, but that's usually accomplished with, we're very sorry you didn't get funded. However, these are some other funding sources that the state recommends that you apply for that you might be eligible for.
And
So-
then maybe we could provide letters of support saying
Yes.
that we embraced it as a council.
And being
Or we-
included in the plan gives you a little bit of, it also gives you a little bit of an elevation that these are projects that we're seen as being important to the community.
One of the things that I just want to go back to is, like, I don't necessarily know, one of the things we've encouraged all projects is we want you to be able to complete a project with this funding and the other leveraged funding and then be able to operate. We don't want it to be a halfway done project after this funding is done, because then what's the point? It's not achieving any of those goals.
Sure.
So like reducing that funding and then saying, well, go and apply for CFA means that you're not getting a complete project. And so, I mean, we've had several projects come up here and they've phased it so that they can get something done, get started, and then build on to that.
Is there any prohibition on, let's say that a project does not get funded? Can they then take a step back and come back and ask for a much smaller amount from the $300,000 that we're operating?
absolutely.
That is okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. Up to $50,000, of course.
Yes.
Is there so to the extent that any budget for proposed projects like this is sort of an educated guess, or hopefully a well-educated guess, does the state analyze the proposed budgets and kind of look at them for accuracy and say, like, no way, they're completely out of their minds if they think they're going to get this done for this amount of money?
So we ask all of our consultant teams across the state to have a cost estimator on staff to help do that as well. And then one of the things that you'll see is, like, we ask for justification. So, like, how did you do this? Was it your cousin's friend? Or like, was it like a professional like GC or something, or an architect? And then like, we look at the budgets with detail. We encourage every budget to include contingency, especially now, given the uncertain inflationary environment. But absolutely.
Yeah.
That said, I will say I've never seen a project come in under budget.
Yeah, I was thinking about the connector trail. I've been involved in street tree planting before in the urban center, and if you do it right, it's extremely expensive. So the numbers I was seeing there, I thought to myself, well, okay, maybe you'll plant 5 trees. Yeah, maybe that's an exaggeration.
And this
Yeah.
is
And I'm
where
with
the
you on
cost
that.
estimator really
Yeah.
comes in
Yeah.
and be like, well, that's a very nice idea, guys. Good luck getting that done.
Right.
So just to make sure I'm tracking, the projects that are submitted, the requests that they have, that's what we're asking the state for. And there's no other adjustments really outside of minute ones, and it is what it is at this point.
They couldn't come back and revise their request like
Right.
tomorrow.
There's no, oh, we found additional funding through a different grant, so we're changing our request to make it lower. That, we're past that point.
No, that could still happen. Yes, we have up until the next LPC. So like I said, some of these requests we expect to go up. But some of them, I suspect most will not go down. But you never know. If somehow one of you wins the lottery and decides to put it all into one of your projects, we could say that we've found another source of funding for this, so we're gonna reduce the ask.
And then I would ask the village and the town, if Mrs. McGillicuddy comes up with that $2 million while the state has it under review, please let us know.
Yes.
So that like we're not considering that as part of the slate.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I just want to come back to this just to make sure I understand. So, and correct me if I'm wrong. So essentially, as we put forward the slate of projects, it's like pass fail as far as the state is concerned, right? Either a project is fully funded or it's not. Okay.
Correct.
But we can.
Yeah,
put-
that's a good way of putting
We
it.
can put forth $6 million worth of projects, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're $800,000 over.
We can
But then
put
the
forward-
state
we can
decides.
Put forward this full slate.
Yeah, you can put
Yeah.
forward everything.
Yeah. Yes,
But-
between $6 and $8 million is what you can put forward.
Okay, okay, but then the state decides.
Yeah.
The state decides.
And we
4.5.
can't rank them.
No.
Nope.
So we're done.
Well, I will say though, you know, we want to make sure that the LPC is comfortable. So the next step in the process is to show these projects to the public. So I want to ask the LPC, are you guys comfortable with this slate of projects, advancing it to the public so that the public sees it at the next meeting? And then at the meeting after that, there's still wiggle room if you want to eliminate a project. But at that next one, we would then be like, that's the hard stop. We need to actually.
What does it require to eliminate a project? A certain number of us that say, no, this one doesn't go forward?
How we engage in the community and showing them the project?
Yeah.
So what we're gonna do is we're gonna show, so we're gonna have a presentation on each of the projects, that would be by me. And then we will have boards around and we're gonna ask certain questions. I think mostly about like how transformative is this project for the downtowns? And then also asking them some questions, like what aspects of this project do you find favorable? What aspects of this project do you?
Akin to how we did the first
Yeah,
public workshop?
yeah, it's.
Would that be ready for fall festival?
Some elements of it will be ready for the fall festival, but the fall festival, we're gonna basically have, I think we're having 2 boards that show the projects, so we won't be showing any like pictures. At the public meeting, we will be showing pictures. We won't have all the renderings for all projects, but we will have for a couple of them, so at least enough to give hopefully an idea of what the project is.
I completely agree that we have 2 community projects that are probably underfunded. But on the other hand, I think what they're bringing forward can be a master plan a comprehensive plan. And that there's getting that design piece and the beginnings of those materials, be it the connector or the marketing, will out there under this funding will be a proof of concept for doing more work in that way.
I think public comment period is over, but I want to give the LPC another chance and then maybe we can come back. So that being said, I just want to make sure the LPC, you guys are comfortable with putting this slate of projects forward to the public?
Yes.
Okay.
I have a hard time eliminating any of them.
Yeah,
I would have a hard time eliminating them too.
Okay.
Me too.
Okay. I think we can entertain one question.
The question was, how does the state process public comment after the 12th?
So after the public meeting, we will consolidate all of the or synthesize, I forget what we actually call it, but we will make sure that all those comments are given to the state. So the state will see all of them. Also, Susan will be there present. And so they see all of them. For the LPC, we will do more of a synthesis, kind of boil it down to these are the main points of what we heard. So just to make sure that there's enough information for you guys to get a sense of, is this project wildly popular? Is this project nobody wants it? And some nuances in between. Yeah. All right. Do we have any other further LPC questions, comments? All right, I think we have one last slide on just some next steps, and then you guys are finally free to go home. So our next steps, we have the Fall Festival is Sunday, October 8th. We will be there. Public workshop number 2, again, is Thursday, October 12th at Munger Cottage at 5:30. We encourage all LPC members to attend if you are able to. It is not mandatory, but of course, we always like to have you there. And if you would like to volunteer to help present, not present projects, but at least like, kind of man a station, feel free to please let me know. And then LPC meeting number 5 will be Tuesday, October 24th, and it will be not here at Village Hall, it will be at Town Hall. So we're gonna come full circle with where we've had our meetings. Yeah,
we flip-flop 4 and 5
Yep.
because
Yeah, we did.
4 was supposed to be in the town, 5 here, we flip-flopped them.
And we will go back to the regular 5:30 PM for that. So that will be a regular 2-hour meeting. And are there any LPC members who know that they cannot make the Tuesday, October 24th meeting? Okay. All right. Anybody else? All right, we're good.